OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, you're very welcome along. It's Tuesday morning. It's Ger and Eoin with you all the way through until 10 a.m. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can WhatsApp us on 0879 180 180, or of course you can get us on Twitter at OffTheBallAM. Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
I'm very well. The quality of stuff that Laker Gale has been pumping out now for, is it 20 years? Nearly, it must be 20 years, or at least, is consistently high. But they have outdone themselves with a little nugget of information from the next one, which is MDMA, Michael Dara MacAuley. All right. So it was long rumoured that he'd done his cruciate and that they had secretly hidden this, and that he'd done what McGinn did, which was train away the muscles around the cruciate. I don't know if everybody knows this, but normally human beings like us, normal plebs, we do our knee, it blows out, you get surgery, it gets fixed, they stitch it back together, and then you rehab for about 6 to 9 months. 6 months if you're a complete freak, 9 months if you're normal, and then sometimes there's complications and it takes a year. What McGinn did was he trained all the muscles around it. And what Larry Tompkins did, he trained all the muscles around it and played on and kicked the old dead brick of a ball 60 yards off the ground. That's not bad.
That was insane.
Yeah.
1990, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that I think he did it. I don't know when he did it, but that's why he wore that tattered old knee bandage to just remind everybody how cool he was.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So MDMA never missed. As far as I know, didn't have surgery. It certainly doesn't. It doesn't look like it. But do you know how he did his knee? It's confirmed he did his knee.
I actually don't, and I haven't seen this episode or the trailers for it just yet.
Skateboarding at a wedding late at night.
Wow! Oh my God! Is this? I'm trying to think on the fly here. That wasn't a situation involving Bernard Brogan by any chance, was it?
I don't know. Was he involved?
There's certainly
Near the scene of the crime.
A passage in Bernard Brogan's book where he says that himself and Michael Dara MacAuley went outside at some of the Dublin players' weddings and went outside and listened to rap music just as in a quiet moment to themselves. Now I'm just equating rap music to skateboarding here, and I just thought, you know what, they're just going to be on a skateboard as well as listening to music together. But and also I'm probably connecting the dots that Brogan also had a bad knee injury, so probably nothing to do with it. Was he one of the kids down in Fairview Park skateboarding around on an evening time?
Maybe he is now. So it was in 2017. Conor McKeown has this story it's in the Herald, I presume it's in the Indo as well. He did it so media reports in May of that year speculated that he would sit out the 3 in a row bid as it was after suffering a torn ACL, but he actually came back in time to play in the All-Ireland quarter-final against Monaghan. Lost his place because of the injury and then couldn't get back in. Played against Monaghan but didn't play in the semi-final against Tyrone or against Mayo in the final. So I remember he was in studio after one of the years. He was very didn't go into details.
Yeah.
While he was still playing, and now it's also says that he talks about having a row with Jim when Jim drops him in 2015, which was 2 years after he was Footballer of the Year. He was dropped for the All-Ireland semi-final replay against Mayo. He said he felt hard done by. On that occasion I felt hard done by. Whether I was or not, it's a completely different story. I was never shy of telling Jim that I felt hard done by. I distinctly remember being in a hotel room with him and having choice words with him. That's the way it is. I'm a competitor. And then it goes on. Jim is a tough communicator. He has his own style. Jim keeps to himself. He won't give a whole lot away. I was probably looking for him to give something away, to react, or to bite on something. He was just like an understanding priest, nodding and taking my verbal abuse at the time.
An understanding priest is absolutely nailed on the head. Skateboarding at a wedding is up there as one of the weirdest injuries you're ever likely to hear.
Well, he missed the whole season. He missed the 3 in a row.
Rory McIlroy doing his ankle, wasn't it, in a game of five-a-side?
It was definitely five-a-side, I'm sure.
Yeah. And
couldn't have been anything else.
Yeah, it's true. Skateboarding at a wedding is definitely above that. I'm looking forward to seeing it. You haven't watched it yet. It's not out yet, is it?
We haven't had no. I haven't seen it.
No.
He says he also was told that, you're going to be marking out a Mahoney in might have been his debut away to Kerry in 2010. Wouldn't have been a debut, would it? Maybe it was his first start or something.
Could have been. They all talk about that 2010 game.
Because they won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The turning point, apparently.
Look how sick you are.
Well, no, I'm not sick at all about that. I don't even remember the game.
Yeah, but you just brought it up. And he said he had to Google it, no money.
Yeah, the sort of the non-interested GA spectator turning out to be an all-star for Footballer of the Year is a really interesting story. He's one of the most interesting characters, and he's almost the sort of guy who would make a real success of any sort of GAA coaching that he goes into. And I wonder if his last few years of being one of the best players in the country has kind of drawn him towards the sport more, in a sense that it's like, I actually want to give more of my time after the game to this. Probably not, but the way in which he managed to come to the sport, and the way he managed to stay with it, I think that's a pretty good story for anybody else who might be in those positions, especially with underage teams, that he's not the sort of tigerish coach who's going to be trying to persuade people to play for teams that they don't want to play or whatever. I'd say he'd be a pretty good coach down the line if that's what he wanted to get into.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think he's still working in the inner city, trying to get people to be more participation-led when it comes to sport at underage level and all that kind of stuff. Is that a sentence? But you know what I mean? And I think doing fairly amazing work by all accounts. So a reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. So if you're an inter-county footballer at a wedding, don't go skateboarding. That's the first lesson of 2022 for you.
Who brought the skateboard?
I don't know. It's just lying around. I mean, has there ever been a skateboard you was lying around that you weren't like, I'm going to have a go on this? Because I'm like,
yes.
You know.
All the time, whenever I see a skateboard, I do not touch that thing. Like, is Michael Dara MacAuley showing up to the wedding like Steve Buscemi, like, how do you do, fellow kids, with the skateboard over the shoulder, or what is the?
He was probably still pretty young at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think he even today he could still get away with not going, how do you do, fellow kids? But yeah, no, I'm interested in that. Interested to see if Laker Gale actually give us the full story on that.
Right, where else are we gone?
Where else do we want to go? So this morning we're going to be getting into our tens chat with Andy Dunne. We're going through our depth chart for the Ireland rugby team ahead of the Six Nations, and Andy Dunne will be with us after 9 o'clock to run through the chart of number 10s. What's the most interesting out half, in your opinion, when you're looking at this chart? Who's the first name you're looking towards?
To see where Jack Carty is?
No, to see where any person is. Jack Carty is obviously the person you're most interested in.
Oh, where does he put Crowley? Is too early. Like, you know, in Irish rugby, it's been a long time since we've just parachuted somebody in for a game like this, you know, like the Italy game, right? So what we're talking about here is, because we know Sexton, if he's fit, is starting all the big games, right?
It would be quite a hot take if Johnny Sexton was not number one in the depth chart this morning, I would say. Yeah,
unless there is a world where Andy Farrell is deciding, I need to find somebody else for the World Cup to make sure that they're going to be ready for a World Cup quarter final, or a game against Japan, for example. You know, now I don't think the Japan meltdown was not actually just Jack Carty. Like,
exactly.
That's the thing. It was there's this Carty is like one bad moment in it, but the rest, he actually was really good in the first half. Like the rest of the team just melts down for whatever reasons. I mean, because it you know, according to David Newsfor, it was all the psychologist's fault. You know, but anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. But my point is that if you were in Newsfor, if you were Andy Farrell, would you play Sexton in every game in this one to try and keep the momentum of where we have, or are you like, I don't care if we lose 3 games, but find a new scrum half out half partnership, find depth at full back? Because if Hugo Keenan gets injured, who's playing, right? So, and depth at wing, like, it's a long 12 months between now and next January, and it's a long 18 months. It's that those 6 or 8 months between January and June, when you're essentially picking your extended squad for the World Cup and going into pre-season training and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, the RFU have no money, and so therefore they're going to say they need every single penny of prize money that's coming from the Six Nations. They've loads of money, by the way. They'll tell you they don't have much money, but they've been very well and carefully managed for years and years and years and years. So they have plenty of money, and they can afford the blip of COVID. You know, if his job is to, what's the most important job he has? Is it to win the Six Nations this year, win the Six Nations next year, and then get beaten in the quarter final, or is it to actually reach a semi-final / final in the World Cup?
Yeah, like,
the truth is, the RFU will tell you it's actually win the Six Nations, and then if you get beaten in the quarterfinals, who cares? Once every 4 years, and the amount of prize money difference between quarterfinals and semi-final and final, not that important. Their interest is in running the sport as a business. But Farrell must want a little bit of glory, and the best chance of getting that glory is not in picking. If Tyke Furlong is recovered from injury to play a part in this tournament, great. But if he's not, what's our depth? Let's find our depth. And can somebody hold up against England? Like, can you play Porter at loosehead and get a full game from Porter at loosehead and somebody else go in at tighthead and we can maintain that? Or do you automatically weaken the loosehead side when Porter has to go to tighthead? And so, all of a sudden your depth chart is, you're replacing two places as opposed to one.
It was a World Cup quarter-final this weekend and Tadhg Furlong is out. You know what they're going to do. They're going to put Porter at tighthead.
Are they though?
I think so.
That might not be the right thing. Do you know?
But it's not the right thing in the long term. But I'm saying if you're looking at it in the short term.
But then, so how do you find out? So if it's France, right, and Furlong is missing, what are you doing? Are you moving Porter over? What's the point?
Well, I'm just making the point that if this is maybe not the World Cup, maybe it's the World Cup final. Maybe this is very much a sort of be all and end all game this weekend, and there is no sense in thinking about anything that comes beyond this weekend. I think that you play your strongest constellation of stars that are fit, and that involves having Porter at tighthead, in my opinion. But there just has to be a view that the Six Nations, first of all, is 5 games long, that Andy Farrell will be Ireland coach beyond the Six Nations, that finding out who that tighthead is, regardless of the World Cup, just even New Zealand in the summer, November, just because you are the coach of a team, regardless of all that sort of stuff, you have to find out who's going to be the next man up beyond Tadhg Furlong. And we actually don't know that. Like, that was actually one of the most interesting parts of the depth chart series that we've done so far, about who is the next man up after Tadhg Furlong. And I think Keith did actually make the point that, like, Porter is still second best in that position, but in a realistic sense, he's not going to be the guy who comes in a Furlong injury situation. So it's time to find out. I just think that Ireland are possibly struggling there, and we look at all the young out halves coming through, as we're going to find out later on. I think Ireland desperately need another tighthead to come through pretty soon to try and just put a little bit of pressure on him, or one of those younger tightheads that have come through to just step up and go to a whole other level. Like, what I find interesting now is that when we get to the point of conversation later about these 10s, is what's the difference between throwing Harry Byrne into the mix and someone like Jack Crowley into the mix? Like, they're both the same age. Granted, I think maybe there's maybe about 10 months between them. Harry Byrne a little bit older, but it seems that we've got to this stage of acceptance that it's okay to have played Harry Byrne a little bit, and he'll probably be coming up on that depth chart a little bit later on.
And is he ahead or behind Crowley for you?
If I had to predict the depth chart, I would say he's ahead of Jack Crowley. And to be honest with you, you probably got to have him ahead of him just at this point. Like,
on the basis that...
Well, like, I was just about to say, there's still something quite enigmatic about Harry Byrne, isn't there? Or something quite mysterious. Kind of like Bruno Fernandes before he was signed for Manchester United. Nobody had really seen the guy play, but everybody knew he was going to be good. I think there's a similar sense to now, in fairness, the last 12 months, like, the people have seen a little bit more. Last 14 months, December 2020 was an okay month for him, and we have seen a little bit more. But certainly when the Harry Byrne hype train left the station before a lot of people had seen him play, and there was good reason for that. And even Brian O'Driscoll last week was making the point that Harry Byrne can do things with the ball in his hand that Jack Carty can't do, which is bringing the ball to the line, that his passing technique is better. He doesn't rotate his shoulders as much. Quite specific analysis granted, but people who've played the game have actually seen a really advanced level of technicality from this guy, and obviously the Ireland coaches are going to see that as well. So I think I think Harry Byrne is ahead of Jack Crowley at the moment, but like the last couple of weeks have been pretty encouraging from him, from the Crowley's camp.
Well, he's got possession. It's he's getting picked for the big games. He's playing. And look, it's very early, but what would you do? So what do you're picking the team for the Italy game, right?
Yeah. See, this is the other thing. The Italy game is the middle game. So isn't there a week off before Italy and then a week off after Italy? Isn't that how it works? It's like a game in an island. Is
there still? Do they not condense it to make sure that the clubs could get more money? I don't know. It's definitely a shorter tournament than it used to be.
Yeah, like regardless of it, there's definitely a week rest before or after or both around the Italy game, and that's kind of not ideal. You'd almost want an excuse. You'd want Italy's second week up in back-to-back weeks, where it's like, right, play Sexton week 1 against Wales, and then give him week 2 off, or accept that he's not going to be able to play the full thing. Regardless of that, I think against Italy you give somebody else a chance at 10.
And do you play them both? That's what I'm asking, really. I suppose it's like you play Harry Byrne and you play Crowley, and one starts and one is the sub.
That would be interesting, like, because would the temptation be to throw somebody more experienced in there? And I'm not talking about Johnny Sexton. Is there still are we wasting breath talking about Jack Carty first of all, and then second of all, is Billy Byrne still going to be somewhere in the mind of Andy Farrell, and also Ross Byrne? Are we sure that Harry Byrne is the best in his household in the mind of Andy Farrell for this year's Six Nations? I'm not necessarily convinced that that's necessarily the case. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just goes to his be out half for that game, but I wouldn't necessarily be saying the be out half is going to be one of the exciting kids who are potentially going to be Ireland out half in 5 years' time.
All right, if you've got a view on this, we're going to talk to Andy Dunne about it a little bit later on. There's transfer speculation involving Manchester United. This is very interesting in that the transfer speculation has come out today where they've been linked with John McGinn. It was the oldest trick in Arsene Wenger's book. The weeks that you were playing lesser teams, it would appear in the papers that you were interested in their best player, who then subsequently would go to shit in the game. It was like frequently it would happen against Arsenal where Arsenal very interested in signing player X the week of the game. It's like, and then that player would be like, oh my God, I might get to play for Arsenal. And they would, miss chances, misplaced passes, throw one in if they were a goalkeeper. It was excellent psyops.
It's a really good idea.
The type of psyops that was second order thinking back in the day. It was like that. Don't have your players not drink booze or smoke cigarettes. And Wenger was like the professor for this. Yeah. It was like, wow, this is amazing. Our mind is blown. I still think back to the Neil Ruddock about him bragging about the quality of dietitian advice that he was getting at Liverpool, and that was the difference between Liverpool and West Ham, was that he's been advised whenever he was drinking to drink a pint of water in between his pints. This was transformative. This was like, I'm going to make it now. I'm finally going to reveal my full potential. The reason I'm talking about this is that John McGinn has been linked with Manchester United. The thing for Man United to do would have been to link before the double header. It was like, we've got our eye on you, McGinn. But they didn't, so it's come out today, which leads me to believe there's something in it. Like, again, the something in it seems to be there's a bunch of Scottish people around Old Trafford, important ones in Fletcher and Ferguson, obviously, who've been impressed with McGinn's flowering as a dressing room leader, both for Scotland and Villa.
Is that person Scott McTominay? I wonder. He's like, yeah, I've seen him.
Oh, maybe. I forgot. She forgot you.
Is this bad news for Aston Villa?
I mean, they're going to spend 40 million in the summer. I don't know. Is it bad news? Like, maybe he's got 2 years left in his deal, so it's kind of the perfect time for Villa to renew and pay him more money. It's like he's looking around going, Coutinho's getting a lot of money. You're being linked with lots of players. How much is Luca Dean getting? He seems to be getting a bit more than I am. Would you say Luca Dean is more important than I am to Villa? I'm not sure about that. Certainly that's what his agent is saying to him. That's what I would be saying to him if I was his agent. So we just float a story. I'll bring a few people. We'll see. What Champions League teams could you get in at the moment? Well, Man United for a start, 100%, definitely. And is it bad news for Villa? I don't know.
Well, there you go.
Depends on the quality of the replacement they get.
The fact that you're saying I don't know if this is going to be bad news for Aston Villa surely suggests that this guy's not going to be good enough to start for Manchester United.
The Villa fans would be like the core Villa fans believe that he was more important in the Championship than Jack Grealish was,
and he was amazing that season,
and he's got better and better and better. And so like you don't want to see him go, but are Villa going to replace him with somebody younger, a younger version, who's like a 22 to 23, 24-year-old for that money, and Steven Gerrard builds the team that he wants. So he's not, I'm sure Gerrard can make that team work, but if you're giving him an extra 40 million to get into the transfer kitty to sign somebody, I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see.
It feels like it will be a bigger loss than just the footballer that John McGinn is. He's obviously a very good footballer and
cult hero.
I do think that there is a question mark about whether or not he'd be good enough to play for a top six club. I think that's I'm not sure he is. But beyond that, I think that first of all, I think he'd be a very, very good addition to any dressing room. The fact that he's 27 years of age at this point means that Aston Villa currently have an asset who is close to his prime, and it just makes no sense to get rid of him at this point, does it? Like, he's a starter in the team, he is one of your most important players when you factor in, like, notwithstanding the fact that I don't think he's good enough for a top six club, that he is absolutely an excellent player, that he has that and the sort of the hero status.
Let me hang on a second now. If you believe that, right, and Villa believe that, then they should absolutely sell him. If they don't believe he's good enough to be a top six player, Because what you're trying to do
I'm
is...
talking about top 6 starters.
Well, what you're trying to do as a club is establish yourself as like the 6th best club, right? Because that's the ambition for any of those clubs who aren't Champions League teams at the moment. And so therefore, if you think someone's going to give you money for a player who you don't think is good enough to establish you there, then you take the money and you reinvest it. You know, so say for example they think 2 of the kids are going to play a load of football next season, and maybe McGinn's part of that rotation, and you get 40 million from him. You take that 40 million, you give the kids all their game time, and you spend that on 2 players at 20 million, and you hope that one of them becomes a 60 million player, and that's how the business gets done for those teams. Like, it's like Leicester buying and selling.
You go to the French league.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or you buy one of those players who's like really good at Brighton, they're obviously linked with, or maybe you can afford somebody from Wolves, maybe you can afford somebody from, and they step up. Like you're a staging post for the next Diogo Jota.
Yeah, like possibly, but I would say Diogo Jota is very much an exception to those sort of moves. Granted, it could pay off. Like, I think there's just such a gulf between what should be a top 6 player and what isn't. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, I can already hear people saying, well, Scott McTominay is not a top 6 midfielder, or Fred isn't a top 6 midfielder, and you very well may be right. But I think Manchester United probably need to be looking at a level above those 2 guys, somebody that's definitely at a level above those 2 guys, to ensure that they get to a level above where they currently are, because they're in a pretty bad position at the moment. But when you look at those sort of top to mid-table clubs like Wolves and maybe Leicester City, the players that they've brought in who have managed to get onto that top 6 level, obviously Jota is one of them. Someone like Yuri Tielemans is someone that you look at the moment and think to themselves, he can be the person who makes the step up to the top 6.
Fair enough, right? But when Gini Wijnaldum signed, everybody didn't go, wow, that's an amazing signing. What if look, you've just robbed him from the rest of the world. And then Gini Wijnaldum in the team.
Yeah.
So the advanced metrics that they must have on John McGinn in terms of pass breakups, successful pass rates, passes forward, chances created, dead balls, they're like, there's a big star around him. He's worth 40 million. He will play in 50 to 75% of our games and will be better than Fred or better than McTominay or better than Donny van de Beek, and so therefore he goes into the rotation. And so, you know, I presume that's how these are made, as opposed to not feeling it.
Yeah.
Not feeling it.
Well, you'd like to think so, but this is Manchester United.
Well, it's definitely been a feeling it, not feeling it up to this point.
Like there's 2 reasons why Wijnaldum worked out so well at Liverpool. First of all, Wijnaldum is outstanding at football. Second of all, he moved to Liverpool rather than Manchester United, and I would say that helped him considerably as well. Moved to a very good club that had a very specific plan for his role, and he managed to excel as a footballer. Moving to Manchester United, as much as like we're seeing reports this morning that they're ready to make an announcement before the end of the season potentially, it's still a bit of a risk from your own career, not from John McGinn's perspective. I mean, he's like moving from Aston Villa to Manchester United would be an upgrade, but there's still a little bit of consternation.
He's going to be on Jesse Lingard money. Thanks very much.
Yeah, exactly.
15 million a year.
You're not going to say no to 15 million a year. That's for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I don't get the sense that you'd be overly upset if this happened.
Well, it depends. If they waste the money, like for a while, it really looked like they were wasting the Grealish money, then it's terrible. But if they have a plan, in Gerrard we trust. It's far too early to say that.
Yeah, and I think if you were talking about things like, you know, the Grealish money or the Bale money or the Coutinho money in the Liverpool days, if Aston Villa are in a situation where there is the McGinn money, then you'll have got a hell of a transfer fee for him. So I think that is definitely worth considering, but maybe it won't be as healthy a fee as you think.
All right, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Is it time for us to talk about here's what's coming up. Michael Bailey's going to talk to us about the situation at Norwich. We'll talk about Adam Idah suddenly scoring and in the team, and them off the bottom of the table and looking up as opposed to down. Sports pages and sports news with John Duggan at 8:40. We're talking Bills Mafia in a moment. Jenny Claffey's going to talk to us tennis. Andy Dunne's going to talk to us at 9:10. And we'll have Luke Jensen at 9:30. In the meantime, it's time for us to turn our attention to Bills Mafia.
Yeah, indeed. I'm sure you're aware, but in case you aren't aware by now, the Bills Mafia love 2 things in life: They love the Buffalo Bills football team, and they love getting absolutely plastered before Buffalo Bills football games and jumping through some garden table. So I've spent every waking moment over the last 72 hours looking back at some of the highlights of the Buffalo Bills season so far. And through watching these videos of Beluga's individuals destroying garden furniture, I have found a hidden meaning. The Bills Mafia this season have told us all about the circle of life. They have told us this awe-inspiring story. Allow me to explain this to you now this morning. So what is the first thing that happens to you in your life? Well, you're born. And if you're born into a Bills Mafia family, you become a baby member of the Bills Mafia. And what do you do with a baby member of the Bills Mafia? Well, you throw it through a table. As a Bills Mafia baby, you grow up, you go to school, you find your feet in the world, you become an adolescent, potentially you get into your first relationship, things start to get a little bit serious, potentially you become Facebook official in your relationship, and because you're in a Bills Mafia relationship, you throw your other half through a table. As someone in a Bills Mafia relationship, things then start to get pretty serious. You move in with one another, you go on a romantic weekend away to Rome together. One of you gets down on one knee to propose to the other person says yes, and then you get married, and then you throw your brand new spouse through a table. As someone in a Bills Mafia marriage, you enjoy your honeymoon to Barbados, you get home and realise that you want to start a family, so you sell your house and you buy a new one, and then all of a sudden you're expecting a child. And because this is the United States of America, you insist on having a gender reveal party, and because you're soon to be a Bills Mafia parent, this has to be done through a table.
3, 2, 1, go Bills!
And then you do eventually become a Bills Mafia parent. Your Bills Mafia baby is delivered safely, and Bills Mafia mother and Bills Mafia child are doing well, which means it's time to put the baby through a table.
Alright, buddy. It's game day. Ready? There he is. You ready? Welcome to Bills Mafia, bud. Yeah! Woohoo!
We've come full circle. That is the circle of life as told by the Bills Mafia in the 2021-2022 season. And they have had one hell of a season.
They are greatest team in football at the moment, and most exciting to watch, and like capable of doing anything. And they as the frozen tundra, as it was referred to, they make it warm. Can I just ask, right? The polystyrene for the babies, fine. Mm-hmm. The two lads slamming their women, and that's how they would have referred them through the table. That did not look fine.
A little bit problematic.
That looked sore.
It's sore, yeah.
She was lying there like, you know.
It didn't look great, and it didn't look easy. That's for sure. But this is what we get from the Bills Mafia. This is the story, and this is
Is it not sore?
The lessons of life. I assume it's very sore.
It must be sore. Are there not like loads of hip and lower back and vertebrae and neck injuries, like higher proportion in the Buffalo area, caused by this bullshit? No? Can they not do something?
There possibly is.
Am I being an old fogey? Am I like...
Well, I don't know. Maybe the Bills Mafia will be in touch over the course of the next couple of days. I can't possibly comment because I've done some more digging into their season, and some of the Bills Mafia star players have had great seasons, and some of their players have had disappointing performances throughout the 21-22 season. So it is time to finally deliver the long-awaited power rankings of the 2021-2022 Bills Mafia season. And we'll start in 5th place, where we have a disappointing Bills Mafia performance from the start of November. The Bills Mafia, they've always struggled on the road, and on this occasion it was an away trip to Jacksonville and the Jacksonville Jaguars car park, which led to this disappointing result. Here's what happened. So if we get a still image up on screen, we can have a look at the key moments here. So we can see where things went wrong. I've highlighted 2 areas. The circle on the right illustrates that we have direct pelvis to table contact, which is a big no-no. You would not see schoolboy table jumpers make errors like that. And as a result, on the left, we see that this particular Bills mafioso has become detached from his Bills hat, which is an automatic suspension from the Bills Mafia. So we gave this table jump a score of 1.8. Now, in at number 4 is an effort from just last Saturday, and I think it's fair to say that the hometown crowd made this a pretty nervous effort. Like, we understand that human nature can take over and it can make it hard to deliver a proper playoffs table jump. But if we have a look at a still image of this one, we can see that the elbow and knee positions are all wrong. This is not really a jump at all. He has fallen onto the table, and this is what we in the industry call a buffalo slump. We've given this table jump a score of 3.1, marked slightly up by the fact that this Bills mafioso did indeed defeat the table. In at number 3, we got back to the early part of the season here. You'll be able to tell it's lovely sunny conditions here, so it's from definitely an early part of the regular season. And as we know, balmy conditions do not suit the Bills Mafia, but we still saw an admirable effort here.
Ooh.
And as we can see from this still image, there is noticeable damage done to the table, which is a good baseline effort. The judging panel also gave extra marks for this mafioso's flirtation with possible life-changing damage to his body. This received a score of 7.6. Now, in second place, we have an effort.
Can I just ask, is that one, is it not melting because of the heat as opposed to his body? Is that not like, you're overrating the impact that he's had versus the fact that the thing's on fire and it's plastic and it's melting? So actually, like a bad karate chop would have taken that in half. The North Korean army could have torn it apart.
It's an interesting point. There may have to be a steward's inquiry into that particular tailgate. How long was the table on fire? Is a pretty good question.
Number 4 was also a Steelers fan.
He definitely had a yellow hat on, yeah. But
Steelers gear, and they gave him the Buffalo thing. He was grandfathered in.
He was grandfathered in.
Maybe you get extra points for like, I don't know.
Anybody who manages to infiltrate the Mafia always receives a warm welcome, especially when it's the Bills Mafia. Let's move into the top 2, and in second place we have an effort that captured the hearts and minds of the world with a display that was underpinned with fantastic technique, originality and teamwork.
What, are you going to jump on him?
So let's break this down. If we have a look at the jumping mafioso on the left, he keeps his hand above his knees, and the slight bend in his knees allows for proper form and posture. And then on the right hand side, the receiving mafioso has his arms by his side, opening the way for belly to belly contact. It is textbook stuff, but it is an extremely clean delivery, and they scored an astonishing 9.2. Now, this would have been a score high enough to win the gold medal in all previous editions of this competition, but not this year. Because this year, just last Saturday, we had the greatest table jump in the history of the Bills Mafia. Here is your number 1. Never before have we seen a human ascend to such a height and descend so cleanly into a plastic table. If you have a look at just how high he got, I'm sure you'll agree that it showed such magnificent athleticism to get that high, but then to also display such perfect technique before beginning the descent into the table. This jump has been awarded a score of 9.7. We have already witnessed history in 2022, and this Sunday all eyes will be on the Arrowhead car park to see if they can go one further. What
I like about this is there's just enough room left for somebody to beat it this year. For our radio listeners, that last one, he was perfectly silhouetted against the sky. That's how high he managed to get.
He was a UFO.
Did look like a genuine WWE.
Yeah, there was like I saw someone on social media comparing it to like a Shawn Michaels jump off the turnbuckle. Maybe it was Shawn Michaels. Well, there's nothing to dissuade us.
This was a good bandwagon to get on a couple of years ago, it turns out.
It was. And
you actually looked into the best team in football.
Well, I mean, what is football? I mean, the football is a sideshow. So that's what this is. It's all about the car park in Kansas this weekend. Sorry, in Missouri this weekend, in Kansas City. It is nothing to do with what happens inside that stadium.
That's this week's Bills Mafia update.
It is. There probably won't be any more. They will lose this weekend, right? And that'll be it?
No, I don't think so.
Interesting.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward. Their new and improved razors. The Rams absolutely slaughtered the Cardinals last night. It wasn't even a game. So if you're just waking up and wondering what happened at 8:05 this morning, that is the crack. David Bosang says, folks, has picked the team on form gone out the window? Depth charts are solid, but form in the week of the game should dictate who plays. No. Form in the week of the game is, an unreliable thing. Like form in the week of the game in training, trained the house down, but like played badly because isn't actually that good. There has to, like, in the Premier League where you play 38 games, whatever, then fair enough. The week of the game is hugely important. But in international rugby, where you play 12 to 14 meaningful games a year, and maybe even less, really, when it comes down to it, maybe it's like 9 games a year that you're really mad up for. Between now and the World Cup, the 3 tests against New Zealand, the big games against Scotland, Wales, France, and England in the Six Nations, and whatever happens in the summer next year won't matter at all, because it'll be pre-season for the World Cup. That's it. They're the games that are left. November, a couple of games in November this year.
Yeah, and it's a reason why the coaches would pay, I'd say, fairly close attention to how guys are going during the Champions Cup, for example, and like that is their form, isn't it? There is just such a finite amount of games when it comes to the national team. Granted, it's a step up, and the opposition is a huge step up, but there has to be a bit of reading into what's gone on over the last couple of weeks, which would suggest that it will be a different team to November. And it kind of has to be. David says, Crowley plays a full match for a poor Munster. Now he's the new Messiah. Typical for a Munster player. Ross Byrne is better than his brother and anyone else, perhaps bar Carty. Mark says, good point, Ger. If we give game time to new players versus Italy, how much, if anything, will it tell us about their ability to play a World Cup quarter-final? Nothing. That's the thing. We'll annihilate Italy and we'll be like, this player can now play international rugby. But what I'm saying is, if you pick a big game, pick Scotland away, pick England, and don't put Porter, keep Porter at loosehead and put somebody else in for that scrummaging, and put them in again against France, and then you know that they have that experience. And then don't take Tadhg Furlong, controversial idea, don't take Tadhg Furlong or Sexton to New Zealand and see what happens. And if we get annihilated, we get annihilated, but everybody learns quickly. We get beaten 60-0, we get beaten 60-0, but everybody will have battle scars and experience of what that's like. I wonder as well if you do try and find the replacement for Tadhg Furlong within your tight head ranks at the moment, and it just is a disaster. Does that then kind of strengthen the idea for Porter to be the backup to Tadhg Furlong as opposed to? It guarantees you that that's what's going to happen, and maybe you need to keep him in reserve because of that. Trevor on the Bills says, and people say Americans have no culture. I mean, that's such a good point. What we've witnessed is art. 8 minutes past 8, time for a quick break. We're back talking Norwich and the Irish lads.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball's the best, number one.
It's the GOAT of sports apps.
Talk about the greatest of all time. Nathan, you know Big Joe. Big Joe's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT. We know it.
So
every single time. Yes.
It's tough going. It's tough for my ego. I'm going to say I'm the Djokovic of this scenario.
I love it.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Download the OTB Sports app now.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
9 minutes past 8 here this morning on OTB AM. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or of course, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream as well. We're going to talk Norwich in just a couple of minutes' time. Particularly interested in Adam Idah and the scrappy first goal that he managed to score at the weekend, which was a really good finish, a brilliant run from him. And when you combine that with the type of build-up play that we saw in the game midweek last week, then I'm getting pretty excited and trying not to.
it's impossible to not be excited by anybody who plays well in the Premier League right now, who happens to play for the Republic of Ireland as well. But then you add in a goal on top of that, and it's a fever dream. It's the best possible outcome from your weekend is to see an Irish person score in the Premier League.
Well, and it's been a long time since we've had somebody who is starting games, and occasionally somebody will come off the bench and nick a goal, and you're like, oh, maybe they'll get in the team, and then they never get in the team. Or it's used to get them. They're basically in the shop window to try and get a move. We haven't had a lot of players playing minutes, but since Dean Smith has arrived, we've actually managed to get Adam Idah in the team. I'm delighted to say Michael Bailey of The Athletic is with us this morning to talk to us about Norwich. Michael, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, very well. Thank you very much. Hope you're well too.
Yeah, we're all getting carried away because we've been waiting a long time for Adam Idah to get his first Premier League goal. The hat-trick in the Cup was really the worst thing that could have happened to our levels of hype, because it was like, oh, right, great, we've got a striker. But it's been a hard road for him to get to this point. The arrival of Dean Smith seems to have been something that's worked out for him. Can you talk to us a little bit about why Idah's in Dean Smith's first team at the moment?
Yeah, I think primarily Norwich have been incredibly shy of goals. That's obviously been a major issue, and it was one thing that Dean Smith has brought in to rectify. And I think Adam Idah got actually quite limited opportunities as Norwich's leading striker. A, because Teemu Pukki has been unbelievable. But B, I think when Adam would come on, Daniel wouldn't really alter from playing one striker up top. So Adam was tending to play in wider roles where he looked like he could at least contribute and be useful. And of course, he did get a go during Project Restart. And I thought as an academy striker coming through, there were some really positive signs there. It was just the lack of game time last season in the Championship that I think really scuppered him. He probably was pretty close to playing more for Ireland than Norwich, I think, to be honest. So I think Dean Smith has got a good reputation for looking at forward players and developing them positively. And I think it was interesting listening to Dean Smith saying that both Adam and him and his coaching staff are trying to work out still what sort of player Adam is and how to get the best out of him. But just little things like using his body better. I think we saw a bit of that in the last two games. He's certainly running the channels harder. He's pulling players out of position and just a bit more dynamic. And I think all of those things are meshing quite well with how Norwich want to try and evolve and improve their survival hopes. So it's great to see what Adam has done in these last two games. It feels like it's only just a start, but it's a really positive one.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And we're obviously not getting really carried away, but the fact that he's playing in the team with Pukki at the moment is interesting too, because it felt like up to this point he was always seen as Pukki's sub or replacement, but you couldn't play them together. But actually, turns out you can play them together.
You can. I mean, many a manager has stumbled across something that really works through pure necessity or because they had no other option. I think Dean Smith has done that a little bit with 4-4-2 because he's really short on central midfielders, and he is already talking about the prospect of having more central midfield bodies back over the coming weeks, which will happen, and that will help his choices. It'll be very interesting if he stays with the same formation. I really like it. I like the way that Adam and Teemu Pukki are combining. It's sort of sharing the attacking burden, which is really helping. And it's probably giving Adam a chance to play in a role he's more familiar with, having played in a pairing through Norwich's academy setup mostly. So I can, to me, he looks more comfortable immediately. He looks like he knows what to do more instinctively in terms of positionally in his role. And then you can probably work on the other bits to help him improve at Premier League level. It'll be really interesting if Dean Smith sticks with the same shape, but I like it. And I don't really see any reason at the moment why you should change it, but we'll see what other results come our way.
And I obviously haven't seen the full 90 minutes of the two games, but is it really Pukki ahead of Adam Idah, or are they kind of both number nines? What's the more subtle layout?
Yeah, that's a good question there. From what I can see, Teemu is dropping a little bit deeper and linking the play more often. And it is Adam who is sort of leading the line more. He's the one running the channels ahead of Teemu, I would say. And Teemu is more inclined to come and drop deep. But I feel like they're given license for either to do it. And there were some moments where the two of them were linking together, which was really nice to see, because when they've done that between Josh Sargent and Teemu, it didn't work at all. So, but it certainly looks like, I mean, you could see from the second goal, I suppose, against Everton, that it was Adam who was running sort of clear through centrally. And I think it's him who will be doing that, or running down the channels, and then hopefully Teemu can get in centrally behind him or beside him.
It's interesting because if we assume that at some point over the next few months that Norwich do revert to a formation that's not 4-4-2, do you see a way for Idah to get into that team alongside Pukki in one of the other attacking positions that isn't necessarily a striker beside Pukki?
Yeah, potentially. I think it depends how novel and innovative Dean Smith wants to be. But I mean, Teemu has the ability to play in the three. If you take it as a 4-2-3-1, Teemu has the ability to play in the three roles behind. In fact, that was actually why he arrived at Norwich. It's just that he took so well to playing as the lone striker. So I think there's a possibility of him dropping a bit deeper, and he's a really good presser of the ball high up the pitch, Teemu. So he's useful in that way. And so that's probably the most likely form. In a way, Adam may represent genuine competition for Teemu going through the rest of the season, because ultimately Teemu Pukki is actually out of contract in the summer. Norwich have got an option that they can exercise, and I would expect that they would. But it would probably help their decision-making process if they knew where Adam was at and if he could be consistent. And in the way that he's physical and can hold the ball up and run the channels, I almost feel he's more of a Dean Smith striker if he's playing one up top than Teemu Pukki is. Teemu was a Daniel Farke player, all ends up, absolutely perfect for him, but it is probably slightly different under Dean Smith. So a real opportunity while the two of them played together for both of them to show what they've got, and it might alter the dynamic for the rest of the season, especially if Adam starts scoring regularly.
I realise that Burnley have loads of games in hand at the moment, but this is definitely one of those seasons where points on the board is very, very valuable. I say points on the board is very valuable. It's only 13 that Norwich have at the moment, and realistically it looks like it's really probably only Watford, although if Everton go into a tailspin, who knows, maybe they could be overhauled as well. When Dean Smith arrived, was there a sense that his job was to try and stay in the Premier League, or that they were already having a look at like what it would look like in the Championship with somebody who has recent experience of bringing a team up and keeping them in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think ultimately Dean Smith came in and they wanted someone who would be able to manage in the Championship. I don't think they went all out to get someone who would sort of do something that would solely be about this year and then down the consequences. So I think there was that in the back of their mind, but certainly the primary aim was to stay in the division. I mean, back in November, Norwich had a really bright start. But then over Christmas, with COVID and injuries and everything, it kind of decimated their performance and results. They were absolutely abysmal, to be honest, but there is mitigation in that. And their task really now is to prove that when Dean Smith came in and there was that uplift in energy, intensity, in creating chances and being more resolute at the back, they've got to prove that they can do that now that they've got most of their players back, which is why, every team can win a Premier League match. But in terms of getting the points for survival, Norwich probably need another 6 wins, I would imagine, even if it's a royally low total this year. And I look at the fixture list. Honestly, I think they certainly cannot afford to lose to Watford. I think they probably need to win it, and then probably the game at home to Palace as well, just to get those points on the board, as you say. Because I do think that who knows when Burnley are going to get all these games scheduled into play, and they'll probably complain about how close together they are. Norwich have such a great opportunity ahead of them, having been absolutely written off by everyone. So it's up to them now, really.
How has Dean Smith done? What's the view of him so far?
Yeah, good, I think. Positive. I think the bigger question marks have been about Norwich's recruitment. So in a way, if Dean Smith can't do it this season, I don't think many people will directly criticise Dean for it, certainly solely. A lot will come down to the fact that Norwich just didn't spend their money well enough in the summer. So he's kind of got a pretty free pass now. I imagine if Norwich go down, it would be. I think he would come under much more scrutiny because there would be quite a bit of expectation there with him in the Championship. But I think he's done. I think he's done well. But especially when he first came in, you could see the improved intensity. I much prefer his game management in games at this level. I thought that was something that Daniel Farke struggled with a little, certainly in terms of it having an effect on the game, whereas Dean Smith has done that and improved Norwich in a game as there become sort of deficiencies over the pitch. He sort of spots them and manages to correct them. So I think there's some real positivity, and there is a degree of excitement over what he can do when he has got a fully fit team, because when he has done that, he has made Norwich competitive, which, I mean, it has been a low bar, but it is all Norwich City fans really want to see, is their team really take it to the others in terms of staying up and not be this embarrassment and joke that can't win games and can't score goals.
When it comes to the defence then, they conceded 45 goals this season, the league's worst. From an Irish perspective, the Andrew Omobamidele element is something that definitely is sticking out at the moment as to why Dean Smith isn't picking him as much as his predecessor. Is it just down to experience? Dean Smith likes to have an experienced centre-back partnership.
No, he's injured. Basically, he's got it's not quite a stress fracture of his back, but it's a stress-related injury in his back. So he has basically been out, I think, for probably a month or maybe 6 weeks. So I think that's the only reason.
At the start of the Dean Smith era.
He has, I'd have to double check that. He's definitely been involved, and I think when Grant Hanley was injured, and sometimes I think he even played ahead of Ben Gibson at one point. I mean, if I would say it's probably Ben Gibson and Grant Hanley when they're playing well as the top two options, but I would say Andrew is third choice when fit, and probably pushing those two as the one to start if either of their levels drop. So I would definitely say I think Dean Smith really likes Andrew, and to be honest, you'd be struggling not to, because I think he's a fantastic talent. I think defensively he is probably ahead of where Ben Godfrey was as a centre back at this age at Norwich. He generally is physical. He's pretty good coming out with the ball. He looks so confident and assured, and there's so much for him to learn and develop into. So I think Norwich see him as one of their most highly regarded assets. So yeah, Andrew will be pushing Ben and Grant very, very, very closely when he's back fit, which will hopefully be in another 2 to 3 weeks' time. So Norwich have got Wolves in the FA Cup at Molineux coming up at the start of February. It'll be interesting if Andrew is maybe ready to come back into that game. If not, we'll see how close he goes. But as soon as he's back available, I expect him to be on the bench.
Dean Smith was somebody who didn't mind a bit of a cup run when he was at Villa as like a means of trying to inject a little bit of momentum into the season. What do you think is going to happen with Norwich when it comes to that game against Wolves? Is there significant interest in trying to like get everybody on board and have a little bit of a buzz around, or is it strictly stick the B team out, don't care about the result, move on, and draw a discreet veil over proceedings?
Yeah, I love that. I've seen a few of those. I think it probably depends what situation Norwich are in, which probably depends on how they do against Watford. I think if they've got everyone back, they've got no real fresh injuries, they've beaten Watford, then you can allow players that are coming back to have a go and see what happens. I suppose it's more of a see what happens thing. You can't. The games are probably useful. Norwich have got quite a big squad. They've had players out. And to keep them ticking over would be really handy. I mean, it is an awful draw for Norwich going to Wolves. If it had been someone at home, I think they could have probably played a bit more with the idea of going for a cup run. But you've probably got to protect things a little bit going away from home to a Premier League side. So I think it's there and it's useful. But I mean, you can't get away from the fact that it's all about a survival battle, really. And the game will be used to get players minutes if they need them, probably, and that will be the sacrifice of the Wolves game, hoping that the results are then played out off the back of that. And most Norwich fans would probably accept that as long as they're competitive in the FA Cup game.
What was Adam Idah's relationship like with the Norwich fans? Were they frustrated at the fact that he hadn't scored, that he had showed promise and was still getting in the team? Was there a little bit of getting on his back, or had they actually been patient with him?
No, just short of one incident with Billy Gilmore, Norwich fans have been pretty good with young players coming through. I think with Adam, they've known, Norwich fans have known about him for a long time. He was always highly regarded coming up through the youth setup. He was like the next big one that was going to come through in terms of strikers, who obviously garner extra attention from supporters as well because they want to see goals. So I think he's always been there. Plus, they've been watching keenly how Adam has done for Ireland, because probably saw a bit more of him there than with Norwich. And I think they've always had a bit of patience with him. And the FA Cup hat-trick, much like you guys said, it was like, whoa, here we go. So here's someone coming through. Let's see how he gets on. And that was probably the big disappointment from last year, albeit it might have helped because there weren't any fans in any of the stadiums pretty much. But, last season we didn't really get to see any of him in a Norwich shirt. It was an unfortunate injury when he came back from international duty in November, and then there was COVID. There was a slightly silly sending off before that at home to Wickham. But he did score the first goal of Norwich's season, which was a late winner at Huddersfield. And he did get the last goal of the season, which was an equaliser at Barnsley. So it was sort of this weird bookend where not much happened in the middle. And I think this season, I've noticed that some supporters have been like, oh, this guy just needs to get out on loan. He's not ready. He can't do it. So not getting on his back, they still see the potential there. But it's like, this guy isn't ready for what we need right now. And then all of a sudden we see the next 2 games and it's like, oh, hang on, no, maybe he is ready. And that switch has gone off. Dean Smith's work on him on the training ground is showing up on the pitch, and Adam's looking a real nuisance. And right now, you know, you wouldn't send Adam anywhere. I think the supporters just hope that this is something he can at least continue on a semi-consistent basis between now and the end of the season, because that will make such a difference to Norwich's whole campaign.
Yeah, I was making the point that it was actually a scratchy enough finish, in that there's a lot of work to do, and it is a real striker's goal. That it wasn't a shot from outside the box. It wasn't, he didn't dribble past players. It was like, okay, he's run to the exact right position. There's not many other places where the ball can go if he's going to score it. It's not a perfectly clean strike, which actually, he's almost hit it too well. He didn't. He scored. And it's like, it looked like a striker's goal. So I think we're all as emotionally invested in it as you are whenever he gets these chances at the moment.
Well, I mean, we've seen Norwich players in general make goal scoring in the Premier League look almost impossible for a lot of the time. So, and I mean, Adam did it in pre-season as well. He scored a fabulous goal against Gillingham, and I think Norwich fans have always seen him as a really natural goal scorer. I mean, that first touch, it did almost get away from him. Likewise, in the second half, he gets presented with a golden opportunity and just takes a little bit longer. So the exciting thing, I suppose, is that he's not going to worry about how he scores as long as he scores, but also you can see there's still that work to do. And if he keeps putting in the performances and then improving the work, then that's really exciting. Likewise, he's got his first goal in the Premier League now. There's that's a monkey off his back, if you like. Let's see how he reacts to that and see if that is another sort of a gear that he's got to go up into now.
Michael, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
It's Michael Bailey from The Athletic there, giving us the inside track on the situation at Norwich with regards to Andrew Omobamidele and Adam Idah. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. It's difficult being an Ireland fan, isn't it?
It's not great when you're looking at options up front, to be quite honest. I hadn't realised that Omobamidele had been out for so long, and that Dean Smith clearly hasn't. We haven't had the referendum on Omobamidele from Dean Smith's perspective just yet at all.
No. I mean, he does like to play a settled defence, and the reason that the things went pear-shaped at Villa were that they had a bunch of players that he had to get into the team, particularly attacking players. It was like, this isn't really how I play, lads. I don't know why you bought me these players. Thanks very much. I mean, I had a very defined style, and you bought players who don't fit in that, so that's not going to happen at Norwich.
Yeah, like it's interesting. Like Idah's obviously he looks the part when he plays as a number 9. And he obviously sees him, Michael Bailey sees him as somebody who is going to lead the line at some point, eventually, for whatever club he settles down with, hopefully for Norwich. But it's the work outside of that he's been so impressive with as well for Ireland and for Norwich. And it did feel that Dean Smith with Aston Villa got so much more out of his attackers than just assists and goals. And even when like Jack Grealish went through a few injury problems last season, kind of felt like Aston Villa were more porous at the back, despite the fact that Grealish is clearly best in attack. I think he has everybody working for the one cause when it comes to stopping goals at the moment. And even from the first line of attack and where Adam Idah plays, that's a big part of playing under Dean Smith's teams.
And it looks like there's proper coaching going on, which is exactly what you want for a young player like that. Like, is he improving? It looks like he's improving. And again, sample size is absolutely tiny, so we're not getting too carried away. At 8:27 this morning, let's run you through the newspapers here. Dundalk signed former 1 million man Connolly and Welsh youngster Williams. Why Ronald Lukaku is not playing with confidence, as Pat Nevin on the show last night. Picture Jacob Stockdale from his hospital bed there. He has season ended following ankle surgery rather. So he injured his ankle at the start of the year. They tried to let it settle down, and then he went under the knife obviously in the last couple of days, and then posted on Instagram yesterday. And also the news coming through that Dialende and Scannell are going to miss Munster's game with Wasps at the weekend. It's heartbreaking for Stockdale because it looked like he was getting back to some level of form, and it's just a level of depth that Ulster don't have at the moment, where they can't really afford players. So he's out, McCluskey's out, and yet the team was obviously sensational at the weekend. The backs were really good, so they do have some depth, but it's the type of thing that catches up with you over the course of the rest of the season.
And Addison obviously as well in the backs there that's missing for Ulster at the moment. Like what happens when Stockdale comes back? Like Stockdale was getting minutes at 15 for Ulster last season. Like what does Michael Lowry shift forward a little bit onto the wing, or potentially at 10 where he's played at the past for Ulster? Like, I
mean, what if we have, what's the collective noun for 10s? Whatever it is, and like we could just play this completely different style of rugby with. I imagine for a moment a fever dream where Larry plays 10 for Ireland in a big game, just to see.
Like that would
bring him to New Zealand.
Yeah.
In the second test, stick him in at 10. Don't mention it in advance. Just like randomly, like, oh, I forgot what.
We talk about the tens being able to bring the ball to the line. I mean, Michael Lowry is a 10 bringing the ball to the line. I mean, he's the smallest man in the park. You've got to really get low to tackle him. I mean, the whole sort of technique of, you know, smashing the number 10, smashing Sexton when he comes to the line. It's easier to do that than to Michael Lowry, especially given the new rules. Got to get low, and he's a hard man to stop. I presume that would add a string to his bow in the next couple of years if he does move forward a little bit.
It would just be interesting. A little thought experiment for you this morning. The Irish Times format needs a rethink as teams can lose interest after early losses. This is Owen Doyle writing about the Heineken Cup. Ireland need to get in line and open doors for Six Nations. That's the notion of a fully open stands. Not fully open stands at the Australian Open, but pictures of crowd violence. It looks like there was a row between the masked and the unmasked. As the tennis was on this morning, did you get a result from a little bit earlier? We'll get that from John Duggan in a couple of minutes' time. Ripping the Arsenal out of it. Now Paolo out on loan and Cup semi is in doubt. See what they did there? Ripping the Arsenal out of it. I'm surprised there aren't more arse puns around Arsenal. Is it because it's not really the London papers didn't get the arse thing until Father Ted?
Possibly, but that was a long time ago. And maybe they've used them all up since the advent of Father Ted.
Sorry, I forgot. The main breaking news, of course, is that Paul Pogba is back, and we know this because he posted on his Instagram channel. That's Marcus Rashford lying in front of. Is it his five-a-side teammates? Did they win the five-a-side again? Are they the happiest five-a-side team in the world? Who knows? I mean, it's good that the lads are all happy at training. So it's Ronaldo's there too. Donny van de Beek is there with the ball. He's holding the ball, kind of like a ball boy. Pogba's there posing. Ronaldo.
Do you get to bring the ball home with you if you score a hat-trick in Manchester United five-a-side? Maybe that's what Van de Beek's after doing.
Oh, it was a seven-a-side training win game. It was, yeah. And so they're getting their picture taken to celebrate winning the seven-a-side. That's what's important.
I mean, it's good for them.
I mean, we probably could build together a league table at this stage of who's won the training games at Man United.
Mini leagues going down after work.
Street leagues. This is gated community in Cheshire versus this other gated community in Cheshire. The Michael Owen Street versus the Cristiano Ronaldo Street.
Do you think Marcus Rashford and Donny van de Beek are in a WhatsApp group where it's like, lads, need 2 more for tonight?
Well, Van de Beek's definitely in various WhatsApp groups asking about moving team.
Get me out of here.
Yeah.
Andy Murray is through, by the way.
Andy Murray.
He won 6-1, 3-6, 6-4, 7-6, 6-4. So it went all the way against his Georgian opponents.
You give him 4 of those sets there. You give him 4 of those sets. Arsenal.
I wasn't supposed to.
Good headline. Perfectly appropriate for this. Gunners set for a huge backlash. Sunday's game with Spurs is postponed due to a lack of numbers. Monday, Gunners agreed to let Mari leave on loan deal. Pablo Mari is out on loan 2 days after. There's pictures of what's going on at Bayern Munich where they're playing 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds on the bench and giving them game time to make sure the games happen versus what's going on at the moment with the Premier League. And the Premier League are building up a little bit of an issue for themselves. What's going to happen is that some players are going to get injured and miss the start of next season, and then get injured at the start of next season and miss the World Cup, and they'll be like, this is when that happened. Stockdale blow, he's out for the year. Eriksen has offered Beasley. This is really interesting. Brentford have offered Christian Eriksen the chance to play football, so he has there's various parts of the world where he will be allowed to play. He won't be allowed to play in Italy because he has an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, which is obviously something that you implant in the heart, sends an electric pulse to make sure that the heart irregularities stop. And apparently in the UK you can play with that. So
that would be like, it's such a fairy tale signing for Brentford. And
yeah, hopefully it's safe. That's the main thing.
Well, obviously, and you'd like to think that everybody looking after Christian Eriksen has kind of done all the checks that need to be done. But if it is safe, then it's like what an unbelievable story that'd be. And Brentford, I think, have been a lot of people's kind of neutral team this year for the second team. And obviously they've had a couple of disappointing results over the last little while, and maybe they started the season like a house on fire, and then maybe have tailed off a tiny bit, but they are brand new in the division and like in 14th place at the moment. They're in really good nick. It'll be one hell of a signing. It'll be the signing of the window if it actually does happen.
Well, is he any good anymore? Do you know? Like, not to be too brutal about the whole thing. It's a great story that he's managed to recover, but like perhaps Christian Eriksen should go and find the next part of his post-football life. I wish him all the best, but like, anyway, it's dangerous, right? Is it not dangerous? I don't know. But Daley Blind, who was his teammate at Ajax, also returned to football after being fitted with a defibrillator due to heart inflammation. So it seems the footballers have better access these days to good quality cardiology, or something is causing them to have heart issues. And they also, the Telegraph, have the story about John McGinn. The other news, and this is going to be very interesting, right? Djokovic facing Grand Slam ban after French about turn. So French have decided that they're not going to allow unvaccinated athletes into the country. This is obviously, French Open is soon enough, a couple of months' time, and they think that Wimbledon's going to be his last chance this year. I don't know, he'll be allowed to get into America, of course he will. But what's going to happen in the Six Nations? Are there any unvaccinated Ireland rugby players, or any players who might be in line to go to play in France? We're playing in Paris this year, aren't we? Right. Yeah. This is the Paris Twickenham year. Mm-hmm. Right, so we'll find out if any of the Irish players aren't, or will they just get a mysterious hamstring injury that's like it's a 1 week thing. I don't know.
Yeah, like I mean, obviously there has been the Munster played in France, Leinster were due to play in France, and then Connacht were at home to Stade, weren't they? So we'll see. Like, it hasn't seemed to have been a big issue, but maybe there have been injuries that have popped up already for the Irish provinces that are going over there.
It's Thomas Tuchel who's bringing up the fact that Pablo Mari has been sent out on loan just days after Arsenal didn't play there. I mean, it's starting to get a little bit bitter. Certainly no one trusts each other at the top level of English football. We're all in this together. No, we ain't. Bees offer Eriksen deal, and Cape Crusader Lopez shines again. This is Shamrock Rovers centre back, man of the match for Cape Verde, isn't it? Is it? Toffee's Roberto hopes dwindle. So Belgium are saying no, you can't. You got one of the best squads in the World Cup. You want to go and moonlight for somebody else and then come back to us and no, do your job. That's what they're saying. Or maybe they're saying maybe Everton can pay us a load of money because Everton are a bit thick. They're desperate. They could pay us a load of money and then we can get somebody even better than you.
Like, I mean, the double jobbing thing is not going to be something that works out for somebody who wants to win the World Cup, is it? Like, although, what is he doing right now? What is he going to be doing this summer other than, you should
be doing work.
Yeah.
Work. You should be going around and meeting all your best players. He should be in Madrid going, look, mate, World Cup, you need to play football. Go and play for a mid-tier Premier League team. Play week in, week out. Get your confidence back, Eden Hazard.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, sorry about that.
I can't necessarily see Martin as being that guy, but like it is just strange that Everton are in the situation that they could be possibly reappointing somebody that they've already sacked. It just doesn't make a whole pile of sense, and it like Everton are Manchester United light, really, aren't they, in terms of their lack of planning?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Everton fans were like, oh, we don't want David Moyes back. I mean, maybe they do want David Moyes back now, but there's not a chance of that happening either. Friend in need, FAI is struggling to set up a Viva Glamour tie. It's been a long week. It's Tuesday. Tuesday's really the hump day, isn't it?
Oh, Tuesday's the worst day of the week by
everybody says
distance.
Wednesday's the hump day, but it isn't, because at the end of the day, midway point, Tuesday's the day.
Oh, Tuesday's the worst day of the week by an absolute country mile. I've always been steadfast in that.
The FAI are rapidly running out. Philip Quinn with the story. Are rapidly running out of options as they seek crowd pulling opponents for the Republic of Ireland in the March international window. It's pretty soon. It's March in like 4 weeks' time. Okay, 6 weeks' time. They had the Italians lined up, it says, but then stupid Italy went and didn't qualify for the World Cup automatically and now have to go through a playoff, so not available. England, who we just kind of assumed would do us a solid, because we did them a solid, they're like, no, we've got the mighty Swiss. There's a story in the papers about your man from X Factor. Simon Cowell didn't know the difference between the England and the Swiss flag.
What?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's
how does that even come about? Like, what?
It's easily done. There might have been there was a competitor wearing the new series of Britain's got something or other.
Talent? Is that what they're looking for?
Hawaii 5-0. This is tab of the morning, I think. Do you know?
Yes, Hawaii 5-0, based off the darts player called Wayne Mardle. Just joking. He's based off a television show, and he's into the top 50 in the world, Ger.
He's into the top 50. Where did it happen?
It happened in Hawaii, Ger, which is where Hawaii 50 is set.
Yeah, good. Okay, fair enough. Waterford.
It's an island off the United States. Well, not really close to the United States of America whatsoever. It's the 50th state. I'm not sure if you know.
Waterford's Seamus Power determined to keep improving after breaking into elite world top 50. John Duggan is with us. John, I was never a Hawaii 50 fan. My knowledge of 50 comes from The Wire, to be honest.
Ger,
okay, yeah.
Ger and Eoin, good morning. I was Mark Harmon was Hawaii 50, who ended up playing Ted Bundy in a TV series made for a TV movie. But yeah, I never saw it. I kind of, a bit like the Rockford Files, it passed me by. Do you remember the Rockford Files on?
No, I do not.
Do you know why they're famous?
No, I do not.
All right.
The Rockford Files.
Rockford Files.
The Rockford Files. Sorry, I was kind of half listening while Googling while Simon Cowell got mixed up between these two flags. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask here. The Rockford Files, I'm not familiar with the Rockford Files.
It was a TV series about a detective. James Garner played him, and Stephen J. Cannell, who did the A-Team. Before he did the A-Team, he did the Rockford Files.
But David Chase was like one of the main writers for it.
All right.
That's where he kind of cut his teeth, and so you see a lot of references to the Rockford Files according to the podcast. I didn't see it either. It was way before our time, John.
It's got a brilliant theme tune on. So if you listen to it on YouTube and you strut down Kerry, you definitely.
But I recognise it.
You recognise Jim Garner.
Can you hum it there?
Maybe I sound like Peter Griffin.
Well, look, it's made a lot of people very happy.
Yeah, well,
so you brought a lot of people back. There was a TV movie released in 2010 of the Rockford Files. Did you see that?
Was there, starring James Garner or somebody else?
Not with James Garner. No, 4.2 was its rating out of 10 on IMDb. So not very good.
You know, James Garner, he's in one of the Tarantino movies. Which one is it? Is it?
You're not thinking of Jackie Brown.
He isn't Jackie Brown.
No, you're not. You're thinking of the other guy. There's another guy who looks very like James Garner, but isn't James Garner.
Oh, really?
Robert something or other.
Oh.
B-movie guy.
This is terrible.
I know the guy you're talking about. He's the love interest for Jackie Brown, but it's not James Garner. But he looks extremely like James Garner. I'm just googling it here now.
Yeah, B-movie famously starring Jerry Seinfeld.
Robert Foster.
Yes, Robert Forster, yeah.
Forster.
There you go. Glad we got to the bottom of this.
Excellent radio for everybody. 8:42 this morning, John. The reason we were talking about it was Seamus Power. Yeah. Seamus Power is like, there's a great line in this where like he's talking about the money not really being something that he thinks about. It's all about the competitive and competition. And to be honest, I believe it. Like, because if you were always thinking about the money, you wouldn't really be able to function. It's obviously a huge perk on the side, but it's all the other stuff that goes with it that's really the most exciting stuff. The best part is playing some of your best golf in pressure situations. That's the thing. Geez, the money is obviously fantastic. I mean, the purses on the PGA Tour are so big on a weekly basis. It's just kind of mind-blowing. 450 grand for finishing third. It's not bad, is it?
Yeah, and he won a bit of money as well for finishing in the middle of the pack in Kapalua the week before. So yeah, $500,000 banked, which if it was me, I'd be just buying a house in Hawaii and staying there. But I think Seamus Power has been grinding so long that I wouldn't say the money's even in his head, because it's been such a grind. I was going through his 429th in the world at the end of 2020. His PGA Tour finishes 130th, 114th, 143rd, 151st. This guy wasn't sure if he was going to make a living 18 months ago on the PGA Tour, and it's been an incredible run. And what's happened is he won a tournament, the Barbasol Championship in Kentucky last year. That gives him huge freedom. Effectively, it says, you know what, you got your job for the next 2 years. He's got his job this year and next year. He's got his card. His tour card is privileges, as it were. And therefore, if the pressure's off like that, then it's great, because he can then have a go. And so exactly what he's doing. So it's brilliant to see.
It's funny, we were talking about Stephen Kenny and the substitutions he was making and the fact that he did or didn't have a contract, and it's always in the back of your head when you're, can I take the risk here? Can I go at this pin or not? I can't, because if I go at this pin and I miss it right, I take 2 to get back, I'm going to miss the cut by a shot. But if I get the birdie, I'm suddenly catapulted 15 shots forward. That's the 15 places forward. That's the difference between feeling secure. Maslow's hierarchy of needs as...
yeah, if we lived our lives without fear, wouldn't it be great? What's that, there's a big quote, isn't there, about if you work a day, or if I can't remember what the quote is, but 5 top 15s this season. I wouldn't be surprised if he won this week, lads. He's 49th in the world now. If he's still in the top 50 by March the 28th, he gets into the Masters, which would be absolutely incredible to see Rory, Sheahan, Padraig Harrington and Seamus Power in the Masters, 4 Irish players.
It's a sensational turnaround, and the other thing is that I didn't realise he was talking about Shane Lowry was texting him, and they won't actually see each other until later on in the year. But he talked about Rory McIlroy and the influence McIlroy had in his career. Every time he played with McIlroy as a kid, I think they're roughly the same age. Are they close enough?
Power's a couple of years older.
Okay, so he would have seen him coming up, and would have heard about him, and he knew that anytime he played with him, that was the standard that you needed to be at. But I didn't realise that McIlroy had obviously turned down scholarships because he went pro, and he ended up taking his scholarship in Jacksonville. So he goes to college in Jacksonville in Florida, which is obviously a good place to go because the courses don't close for snow at any point during the year. And also pretty good party town, and that's why he sounds like he's an American. I'm like,
he's even investigating apparently to in Brian Keogh's piece to check out what we need to do to be on the European tour. So he was on the satellite tour, the Corn Ferry tour. He won on that back in 2016, but to get to it's suddenly just taken off like a rocket for him. It's absolutely a fantastic story for Waterford and for Seamus Power, and for all of his the people that support him. But it's a grind, it's a grind out there, and to do something in life without fear then opens up a myriad of possibilities. And he's playing now in California this week, has got a chance to win there. He's played well there before. And I remember the Olympics, because obviously there's a lot of dropouts of the Olympics back in Rio, and Seamus then played with Padraig Harrington. You're going, who's this guy? And I remember seeing him at Lahinch in 2019 at the Irish Open. I was kind of feeling sorry for him because he's come over from the States, he's playing in his national Open, he finished 60th, about 20 shots behind John Ram, and now look where he is, and it just shows the art of the possible, lads.
Yeah, no, totally. James says, fun fact, James Garner played the grandfather in 8 Simple Rules and would sometimes be shown watching the Rockford Files #meta before it became Facebook. 8 Simple Rules?
Yeah, I did not know he was in that. I can't even remember the grandfather character in it, to be quite honest with you.
Well, he became more central after the dad died in real life, didn't he? Isn't that what happened?
Is that what happened?
I think so, yeah.
He was in The Great Escape as well with Steve McQueen, James Garner.
Do you know who Steve McQueen is?
I know who Steve McQueen is.
It's close to the bone now.
It's I'm just being absolutely dragged through the mud here.
Have you heard of James Dean?
No, I haven't. Can't quite say I have.
Elvis?
No.
Sometimes there are impersonators.
Elvis Costello, right?
I was watching a good bit of Golden Girls over the last...
Actually, lads, I've never seen the Golden Girls.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Or Cheers.
Over the last few... well, they're treats for you to indulge. And I remember sitting watching it one time, and Quentin Tarantino's name popped up in the credits. I was like, what? And could never find on his list of director or assistant director, he was an Elvis impersonator in the background in one of the episodes.
Wow.
That he said the residuals from that ended up being the money that he used to make Reservoir Dogs. That getting that check in from, because that episode of Golden Girls was like a special. It was an hour-long thing that they showed every year, so he would get $5,000 over the course of 18 months that allowed him to go and make Reservoir Dogs. And you're like, well, here's the little connection between the Golden Girls and Reservoir Dogs. That's what people tune in for at 8:48 this morning.
I mean, it's almost as impressive as the James Garners in 8 Simple Rules.
Owen's eyes glazed over about 20 minutes ago here.
I really just don't have any interest in anything you say, least of all this.
What else is going on, John?
Andy Murray through, lads, to the second round of the Australian Open. First time he's won a match there since 2019. Remember that tearful press conference back then when he talked about his chronic hip problems. He's got a metal hip since then. He prevailed against Nicolas Basilashvili, the Georgian, in 5 sets. And he knows it's been a long road.
It's been a tough 3-4 years. Put in a lot of work to get back here. And I've played on this court many times and the atmosphere is incredible. I've always had fantastic support. And yeah, this is the one where I thought potentially I'd played my last match on 3 years ago, but amazing to be back, winning a 5-set battle like that. Couldn't ask for any more.
So Petra Kvitova out. She's been knocked out by Sorana Cirstea. Wins today for Garbine Muguruza, Simona Halep, Daniil Medvedev, Andrei Rublev, Nick Kyrgios on court at the moment, already serving underhand. We have Emma Raducanu as well in action this morning. Jacob Stockdale set to be out now for the rest of the season, ankle surgery, as he posted on Instagram last night. Hopes that there will be crowds for the Six Nations games against Wales, Italy and Scotland at full capacity in Dublin over the next few months. The Premier League has postponed Burnley against Watford tonight, but the match between Chelsea and Brighton does go ahead at the Amex Stadium. That'll be a good footballing contest. Celtic moving within 3 points of Rangers at the top of the Scottish Premiership last night, lads. A 2-0 win over Hibs. Rangers going to Aberdeen this evening, and the Africa Cup of Nations continuing as well today.
All right, John, good stuff. 8:50 a.m. this morning here on OTB AM. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or of course, as ever, you can get us on WhatsApp. 0879 180 180 is the number. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Returning to the Australian Open, I'm delighted to say Jenny Claffey is here with us to offer some analysis of the actual tennis itself. Jenny, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start with Andy Murray, the story of the morning so far. Winning a 5-set match 3 years, did he say, after what he thought was going to be his last ever match at the Australian Open. This is an incredible story, and it's kind of a fitting end to his career. Whatever happens from this point forward, it's like one of those comebacks that is probably the exact characteristic that we will remember Andy Murray of.
Yeah, like Andy Murray, it's an incredible story. Like 3 years ago, he sat in an interview in the Australian Open in tears, thinking that was going to be his last appearance in the Australian Open. And here he is today, coming back from winning 5-set match against Basilashvili. Incredible player. He's got a great history in the game. You know, he's won so many Grand Slams. He will be remembered for that fighting spirit. So as you said, like, this is a fitting end to his career, regardless of what happens next. It's just fantastic to see him out there and competing at that high level again.
How far can he go? What kind of a season can he have, do you think, realistically?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends. I guess he's got a metal hip now, so he's like the Iron Man. It's kind of hard to know how that's going to hold up. I mean, he certainly has the grit and the determination to get to see him through the season. Everyone would love to see him, obviously, in Wimbledon, especially the Brits being his home surface. And like, I think that going forward, you know, it's a tough, long season. It's very physical. The surfaces, there's 5-set matches. It's going to be hard to see him through the end of the season, but I hope we can see him through the next 4 Grand Slams anyway.
Which of the surfaces is the hardest to play on, just on a purely physical level?
I'd say the clay court is probably the most difficult surface to play on. The ball bounces higher on a clay court surface, so therefore the rallies are going to be lasting longer. There's going to be less winners, because normally on a fast surface such as grass courts, the points are shorter. You know, they might last 6 to 8 shots, whereas on a clay court they could be lasting anywhere between 12 and 24 shots. So a clay court is definitely more physical on the body, and matches last longer on that surface. So for a guy with a metal hip, it almost is Wimbledon, which is his best chance of doing something bordering on the special. Definitely, especially if you look at his career anyway in Roland Garros, which is the French Open. He hasn't had as much success as he has in the other 3 Grand Slams, like the US Open, Wimbledon and Australian Open. And what's the difference in the surface between Australia and, say, the US? Are they similar enough? Is there a significant difference in them? Why have we seen Djokovic, for example, completely dominant here, but less dominant to a certain extent in the US Open? Well, I wonder, is that got to do with the surfaces? Firstly, to answer your question, the surfaces are the same in the Australian Open and the US Open, but one of the differences is that, like, the Australian Open is the first Grand Slam of the year, so a lot of the players are coming in fresh, having had some time off and an off season, whereas the US Open is the last tournament of the year, Grand Slam of the year. So they've played a lot of tennis in the legs up until that point. So, and especially Djokovic, with how successful he is, he's lasting to the business end of every tournament nearly. So by come the US Open, maybe he's a little bit more fatigued. That could be one way of looking at it. And in terms of the recovery time from the matches, because we obviously see them play 3-set matches in the women's and then 5. What does the body feel like after going the full distance in one of those matches, and how quickly do you feel like you're ready to go again? Well, having played on the women's tour, we play the best 3 sets, and you see the men play the best of 5. I mean, that's definitely more grueling on the body. There is a day in between each match, so you get a day off in between each match to allow for a little bit of recovery. So you'll see the players in that situation, and in the back rooms of these tournaments still have ice baths, there'll be physios on hand. So there's a lot of that, like stuff that goes on in the background on those days off. So it's not as much about the practice, it's more about the recuperation and recovery to get ready for the next game.
And do they genuinely recover? Like, do you feel as the tournament goes on, or even just from your own practice, like that actually 1, 3, 5, 7, you can play at the same level on those days? That the science is good enough now that you can actually recover properly?
Well, yes and no, because I mean, in the beginning, the first matches you play, you've got that kind of pre-match nerves. You play the match, the tournament started. You want to get a bit of momentum. So then you think, though, by match 3, like so round 3, you're a little bit more fatigued. You start feeling in the legs, but also you want to play your way into a tournament. So there's those two ways of looking at it. But come the end of a tournament, your adrenaline gets you over the edge. You don't feel any aches and pains really until you shake hands at the end of a match or at the end of a tournament, win or lose. Then everything starts to hurt a lot more.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Djokovic not going to be there in terms of the actual tournament itself. Was he automatically your favourite to win this, given that he is at the end of his career? No matter what happens, he could very realistically be competitive for the next 3 or 4 seasons. We know that from how long Federer has lasted, but that we were beginning to see players not be intimidated by the fact that they were up against Djokovic on the other side of the court. We were beginning to see players push him and occasionally beat him in big matches in Grand Slams. Not that often, I have to say, obviously, but there was definitely proper competition for him. Did you, if he'd had his visa, did you think he was going to win this tournament?
I would still have put my money on Djokovic to win the event or got into the final at least. I mean, he is definitely still at the top of the game. He's on level with Federer and Nadal on 20 Grand Slam wins. And I think he's really gunning for that 21st Grand Slam victory and also to create history by doing that. As you said there, I think he definitely has another 3 to 4 years in him to play. Unlike we used to have the big four of Roger Federer, Nadal, Murray and Djokovic. You see now those kind of players are not so much at the forefront of the game. And now we have this new next gen top 4, but Djokovic is still involved in those. So that includes Zverev of Germany, Tsitsipas of Greece, Djokovic and Medvedev of Russia. So you see, he's still at the forefront of the game. I still would have thought because he is so determined to get that 21st Grand Slam, that he would push on, because he'd be going for his 10th Australian Grand Slam victory, which is just incredible. But as you said, some of the other players, like the likes of Medvedev, beat him in the US Open final last year. So there are players coming through and beating him.
Have you, or is there like a general kind of logic out there about those three in terms of Zverev, Medvedev and Tsitsipas, about who is actually going to be the one from that trio who could emerge and be a Djokovic type in this generation?
Looking at the results in the last few years, I think Medvedev is more likely to be the next, number one. He's number 2 in the world at the moment. He had a fantastic season last year, winning the US Open at the end of the year and the year-end event, which is the top 8 players. He also beat Djokovic in the final of that. So he's coming in on great form, having had a great year last year. He has the game as well. He's got a huge serve, and he's also then dictating play with his forehand. So he's got this cannon of a forehand. He's able to hit winners from every area of the court. He's also very physical and can move very well around the court. I think he's definitely a name to look out for in the next few years.
What about Nadal? He's in the tournament. Is it too late for him? Is the days of Nadal winning these tournaments, is that gone? Or again, we shouldn't write him off for the French, but it looks like he's definitely on the final few holes of his career.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think after taking off 6 months last year after the French Open to recover from a foot injury, his chances, as I said, other than the French Open, may not be as high as they used to be. He can never write off such a champion. He has 20 Grand Slams under his belt, but he's facing a tough draw in the Australian Open here. If he gets to the quarterfinal, he'd be playing against Zverev, who's the number 3 ranked player in the world. So, he's got a tough task if he is to get over the line. He's only won the Australian Open 3 times before. So, only 3 times, but it's not his best surface on a hard court either. And it's very physical and grueling over in Australia.
What about the women's draw? Because Ash Barty, we were talking last week about the normal pre-tournament hype, and Australia would have been agog about the fact that they have a number 1, they have a favourite in Ash Barty, but for the Djokovic saga. And so it's been somewhat overshadowed a little bit locally, which may be no bad thing in terms of the level of hype that she's facing. But how do you expect Ash Barty to do? And does she have the game to bear the burden of home favouritism?
Yeah, so that's a topic of conversation in a lot of her interviews, has been around, the pressure of playing at a home tournament. But she seems to relish it and looks very relaxed coming into this tournament. She won an event in Adelaide a week ago. She seems to be a fan of playing in front of her home crowd. She's also, again, had an incredible year last year. She's been the world number one for the last 3 years. Definitely has the game to play on the hard courts in Australia. She's got this fantastic kick serve, which really affects the women in terms of where they're having to contact the ball. They're playing the ball a little bit higher, whereas most women like to play it around hip height and they like to play up close to the baseline. She pushes the opponents back a lot more. She's able to use a lot of variety in her game. She uses the backhand slice incredibly well, which takes the opponents out of their rhythm. I definitely have my money on Ash Barty to win the Australian Open this year, although there are a few other good players up and coming as well that could push her this year.
Who do you think?
I think the likes of Garbiñe Muguruza, she's the number 3 ranked player. She's had a great season last year as well. She's also beat Barty last year. She's definitely one to look out for. I think Osaka is back and she's the defending champion from last year. However, she did take 4 months off last year, so hasn't been playing as much, had COVID at Christmas, so may not be had her form, but I still think you can't rule out, like, she's a 4-time Grand Slam champion, Osaka, and she looked incredibly comfortable out there yesterday playing in her first round game.
The Emma Raducanu story obviously is one that is force-fed us through the British media. Every single thing that happens with her is now front page news on the Telegraph every day. And look, justifiably so, because you come from nowhere to win the US Open. You're obviously going to be a huge story. The stuff that's happened since has been interesting to watch. A change of coach and not playing that much, really, not getting out there and just kind of seeing exactly where your game is at. So what are your level of expectations for her, both for this tournament and really for the rest of the year?
I mean, Raducanu is a fantastic tennis player. Like, her results last year in Wimbledon and the US Open, to come from, qualifying and win and not even drop a set in the US Open was just amazing. She has a fantastic game, a great serve, a very good all-round player, a super athlete around the court. She moves very well. I think that, the media have really hyped her up. She's only 19, so she's become this global superstar overnight, and that definitely has to have an impact on her, because it's very difficult to just transition from playing on the ITF circuit, which is the level below the main circuit, which is all what we see now on the Grand Slams, to then just be the talking point of every tournament. Coming into the Australian Open, she hasn't played as much. She said she switched coach. She had COVID as well over the Christmas break, and she got a hammering last week in one of the warm-up events in Sydney, losing 6-love, 6-1 to Rybakina of Kazakhstan. So, she's not coming in with huge confidence. However, she's a great player, but she's meeting a fellow US Open champion in Sloane Stephens in the first round. So it's going to be a battle of the hard hitters out there today. But for the rest of the season, I definitely think with time, she's going to grow and develop into possibly top 10, maybe number 1 ranked female tennis player in the world.
All right, okay. We're living obviously in the post-Serena era, really. And is there a trend emerging in terms of the style of what's coming? Is there have people taken as much as they possibly can without obviously having the physical attributes of Serena in terms of the power game, or is there a change and an evolution in how the best women are going to play?
We've definitely seen an evolution of the women's game over even the last 40 years, up until the Williams era. Like, before that, the games like with Graf and Navratilova, it would have been a lot of serve and volley and chip, and the rallies wouldn't have been lasting as long. Whereas since the Williams came along, they brought along this very powerful game with big serves and big ground strokes. But even since then, we've now seen that the ladies' game has evolved into more skillful. The players have really become more athletic. There's a lot more speed and endurance required. You need to be a more all-rounded athlete now on the tennis court, rather than just this hard-hitting player. So if you look, for example, at Williams with her huge serve that she has, like 120 mile an hour serve, and really powerful ground strokes, versus Ash Barty, who's now the world number 1. She plays a lot of style, a lot of flair. She uses the slice. She mixes up her spin. She can come to the net. So there's a lot more variety in the women's game, especially in the last 10 years, which is really exciting for the future prospects of the game.
This is probably something that we're not going to ever get an answer to, but is the variety, or will the variety reach such a level that it would have been able to withstand even Serena at her very best? Would it have been able to grab a couple of Grand Slams here and there, or is it just a natural evolution and nothing could ever have stopped what Serena did in the game?
Well, I think that people had to try to evolve their game because Williams were so dominant. So they had to try to be more creative and have a little bit more flair about them. And when you're playing somebody who plays with such power and plays so close to the baseline, you, as a player, you have to try to take them out of their rhythm and out of their comfort zone. So if you try to play back a powerful game, they're going to beat you. You're playing them at their own game. So because of that, then there had to be a change in the game. So I think now that has definitely helped create that more variety in the game, where players are having to develop different slices and spin and touch and drop shots, to counteract that power-based game.
So you're saying you're picking Ash Barty to win the women's?
Yes, money's on Ash Barty and Medvedev for the men.
All right, good stuff. Well, we'll see how you get on. Jenny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks very much, guys.
We'll obviously keep a close eye and update everything that happens on the Australian Open every morning for you here on OTB AM. Brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We have the number 10 depth chart with Andy Dunne coming up next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Club Championship Show on OTB Sports.
They're a unique group, there's no doubt about that.
It was a real kind of statement of intent. Yeah, right from the start they were really on it.
This is probably the big chance. You can be absolutely sure that they will want to leave absolutely nothing in that changing room.
Don't miss a moment of the GA Club Championship. Download the OTB Sports app, subscribe to the GA podcast feed and watch the Club Championship Show every Wednesday across OTB's social channels.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
I'm even happier seeing Karen's face on screen, so it's just beautiful.
Keep up to date with the latest WSL action and the biggest interviews.
I just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation. Just love that moment in the sort of limelight.
Subscribe to the Koi Gig podcast stream on the OTB Sports app now.
It's trying to find that ruthless kind of streak.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
Kai Byrne is so exceptionally good at picking his moments.
It's the fans really that you want the head coach to address.
I think it was the red card.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, if Irish Rugby is obsessed about anything, it is our number 10. So today's depth chart will no doubt be a little bit fruity. I'm delighted to say Andy Dunne is with us, a fruity number 10 himself. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. I'm very well, thanks.
Where would you be in your own depth chart at the moment?
Sorry?
Where would you be in your own depth chart at the moment? If, peak Andy Dunne, I don't know, was that your time at Connacht? Was that, or maybe your best years were spent stewing on the bench at Leinster, or maybe it was with Quins?
No, probably the best fun times were stewing on the bench in my early years in Leinster. I think peak rugby-wise was probably in Harlequins. I had the best form of my career there, surrounded by a few English internationals.
Yeah, not a bad crew, not a bad setup, not a bad team. Just where would you be in the depth chart at the moment?
I would say near the bottom, without any false modesty. I think the game has moved on. I think the players, in terms of their fitness level, their skill level, their kicking percentages at 10, their accuracy, their passing off both hands, the increased level of threat towards them physically from defences. So I would comfortably put myself near the bottom there.
Okay, fair enough. We were having a little weird thought experiment a little bit earlier on. So was it Lowry we were talking about? This was your idea.
It's not my idea. I don't think I'm original. I'm sure you've seen, Andy, that Ulster fans know that Lowry's has played 10 before, is a potential number 10, and they see maybe the possibility of Stockdale coming in at 15, or can Addison play at 15, and I guess people are just excited about this Ulster backline at the moment and trying to find constellations that involve getting all these kids on the pitch at once, and one of those constellations is Michael Lowry as a number 10.
Yeah, I can see the logic in it, in that I suppose Ulster's star turns this year have been their midfield, their centres, and the back three, and they have strength and depth in those positions. If Lowry were to get a run at 10, I think he's on record as saying he'd love to do it himself as well. It's not so it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I think he'd be quite a throwback to the Welsh factory of out halves, to small in stature, jinky, elusive type players playing in at 10. That was very much commonplace in Welsh rugby in the 70s and 80s. So somebody like the likes of Jonathan Davies, for example, who famously went to rugby league. But yeah, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility he could get a run there at some stage. I don't think it's in Dan McFarlane's immediate plans, but it might be in experimental plans down the road.
Is he too small? Is that actually a thing in international rugby now, or has the game kind of gone with the rule changes back the opposite direction? There, or you could have so he's 5.5 feet. Is there a possibility you could hide him in defence, but from an attacking perspective, it could be dynamite?
I don't think he's too small. If we're speaking plainly, I think he is obviously small in stature, but to play fullback is equally physically challenging. There's obviously the aerial battles. There's people would have questioned that regularly. Opposition coaches, and he comes through all of those tests with flying colours. I suppose there's a question mark in terms of the defensive channel that 10 plays now is pretty busy. A lot of traffic down through there and a lot of big back rowers. If for example, Lowry was playing against his own team, he'd have Vermeulen running at him pretty regularly, and that's a very obvious mismatch. But it's always been like that in the vast majority of out halves. If you look at Humphreys, who played for Ulster, you look at Raj, they weren't physically huge. I mean, the height doesn't make any difference in terms of your physicality and defence. So it's more about your ability to tackle, your technique. I wouldn't have any doubts about Lowry being not physical enough for 10 in any way. I think it's a question of whether he's suited to running a game. He could be very innovative and tricky, but he may not be a good game manager at 10. That always takes time to tell. Okay,
that is the fair point, I suppose, because I was thinking, like, if you're Ulster and you're trying to win a European Cup, then you need some completely random outside the box thinking, because your 10 at the moment is grand when it comes to what you need to do, or your 10s at the moment are grand, but I'm not sure that you're going to be able to win a European Cup with them, and so maybe something like that in the long run might be possible. But anyway, look, we got a little bit off course there. Let's talk about your depth chart, right? There's no doubts Johnny Sexton's number one, or is there, in your mind?
No, I think he's clearly number one at the moment. Health and fitness allowing, I think there's no debate, no.
Okay, you've got Jack Carty number 2, which is very interesting, because at this stage we don't feel like Carty is going to be part of the Ireland setup under this current management, but we're not sure. We don't know. Maybe he's played himself. Maybe it's been irresistible. What do you think?
I think his attributes all around as a 10 deserve inclusion. He's got something on his side now that perhaps the likes of, say, Harry Byrne doesn't. He's got experience and maturity in the role. He's got leadership as the captain in Connacht. I think he's hardened by experience, and I think as an out half, it's a hugely beneficial thing. He was very much the fall guy, I think, in the Japan World Cup, and people forget he created both tries in the first half against Japan, and the entire team was underperforming in an underperforming management at that stage. And I think Carty was unfairly made the fall guy because he wasn't Sexton on the field, and he was omitted from the Irish squad. And then I think he even went through a loss of form where he wasn't being selected in Connacht in the immediate months following that World Cup. So he's come through very, very significant and very public challenges, and he's come out the other side. And I think that gives you a level of resilience and toughness that is merited for inclusion in an Irish setup at this stage. His current form is, I would say, fair or slightly above. I don't think he's playing the best rugby of his career, but I think he deserves a second bite. I really do, and so I included him.
There has, is there something more that Andy Farrell is seeing or not seeing? Because it is new management since then. Granted, Farrell, of course, was informing decisions in 2019 as well and was part of that coaching ticket. But is there something since then, Andy, or a theory that you think that might explain his absence from the Ireland squads?
No, I suppose he's looking at. He's just looking at all the players at his disposal. I don't think there's anything untoward going on. I think coaches will have preferences, coaches who have worked with players. Perhaps the loss of form that Carty showed, or perhaps there was something in terms of his consistency in training that Farrell, having worked with as a coach, may have seen that he didn't particularly appreciate at the time. But that's just speculation on my part. In terms of looking at him in the cold light of day, in terms of how he's performing on a regular basis for Connacht, I think he merits inclusion in the Irish squad. And I think his history is something that is going to stand to him in terms of his resilience overall, his ability to lead the troops, his ability to show game management, his maturity, and I suppose maturity in his own career gives him a seniority and gives him, I suppose, a bit of gravitas coming into that position where you can always pick young starlets, and it's always a risk, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I think in the Six Nations, there is a very clear argument from my end to say that Jack Carty deserves to be in the conversation for sure.
I just want to play a quick clip. This is from last week's Friday Night Rugby, and Brian O'Driscoll was chatting about Jack Carty.
Just there's something about Carty that I just, I don't know. I want to see him attacking the ball a little bit more as a player and staying squarer. I think he's a habit, a bit like Carberry, of turning his shoulders to where the ball is being passed. And I think you get away with that maybe at URC, maybe even Europe, but at international level, pushing the defence onto the ball carrier there, they're going to get smashed. So I do think that's one area of his game that he absolutely needs to hone. Madigan used to do it as well for Ulster, and probably still does it a bit, where as soon as you turn your shoulders, the defence is gone from you. You're not a threat anymore. And they'll move on and get double hits on whoever your target is. So I think that's one area that he needs to improve on. But the rest of his game has been pretty solid. I look back on the Leicester performance again. I wouldn't say it was necessarily Roy of the Rovers stuff. It was, I'm looking for highlights for BT for the game on Saturday, and I watched the first half, and he was solid without being exceptional. Took his try well. Obviously knocked over the drop goal at the end. So he's there for clutch moments and he's delivering. But for me, there still remains some hang-up. But yet, the alternative right now with Carberry gone, I don't know if it's either the Byrne brothers because of their lack of game time.
That's the question, right, isn't it? At the moment, not a lot of people putting a hand up to say, pick me, coach, pick me, put me in, give me the ball. And he is doing that. He's playing regularly. He's number one at his province. He's playing at a high level. So it looks like he's worth a shot. Before we get to the Byrne brothers, right? If Carberry was fit, if he elbow or the arm injury hadn't happened, where would he be in the depth chart?
For me, he'd be number two as a shoe-in as well. I think Sexton and Carberry were established very well and very comfortably in those two positions after the autumn internationals. And I think Carberry really distinguished himself in terms of game management and in terms of pressure goal kicking, particularly in the New Zealand game and in the Argentina game as well. So I think overall, you have to just feel sorry for Joey. I'm sure he doesn't want pity, but he must be pretty demoralised given the last 2 years, and I'm pretty certain he would have got maybe two, maybe even more starting games in this Six Nations, whether that was through choice or through Sexton, maybe not rolling 5 games on the bounce. But I would have thought it's obviously given Farrell a big headache, but I don't think there would be any argument Had Carberry been fit, I think he was a clear second choice.
Okay, and getting close to putting Sexton under pressure, or no?
I think so. I think just that's based on the physical consistency levels for Sexton. It's difficult for him to put together a consistent run without a knock here and there, and for that reason putting pressure on him. In terms of his overall game, he's a different player to Sexton, and I think that is a strength. We don't need to replicate Sexton forever. He's a certain style of player, and we won't always have his style. So Carberry can bring a bit more threat as an individual runner in attack in terms of line breaks, and that can be a big positive at 10 in the modern game. So yeah, I think you would have put a little bit of pressure on Johnny, but not a huge amount. I still think it was a very clear 1 and 2 had Carberry been fit.
Okay, so let's get to the Byrne brothers. You've got Harry Byrne ahead of Ross Byrne, and Jack Crowley does not appear on this depth chart at the moment, so it's safe to assume he's 5th choice. Why is Harry ahead of Ross for you, and do you think Harry is ahead of Ross at this stage for the Ireland selectors too?
I think he is, yeah. I think Harry would be included. He came on in the autumn internationals and I did something that is, I suppose, possibly threatened his involvement in that. I think he tried too much. He tried too many complicated things, too many difficult things, and that is the risk when you're a young out half. Is you want to show everyone you can pull a rabbit out of a hat, and you're very capable at the highest level. And in reality, the opposite is really what's required. You need to seamlessly come into a pretty dynamic environment, and you almost need to underplay your hand. And I think Harry was guilty of overplaying his hand and making mistakes in the autumn internationals when he got an opportunity. I don't think that is a death knell for any out half. I think the players around him, the senior players, the management, like Mike Catt, could very, very easily sit down and with the likes of Harry Byrne and suggest he reels it in a bit. And I think it's an easier thing to do than and try and ask a mundane or average player to become exceptional. You can certainly try and put the shackles around a young, ambitious out half with a view to allowing him bed into the environment, underplay his hand for a while, and then he still has the bit of magic in his toolbox. But for that reason, I think, yeah, he's ahead of Ross Byrne. He's probably ahead of Ross Byrne in the Irish selectors' minds for the Six Nations. I think given that Carberry's injured, Sexton is a clear starter. The reason I went for Carty is that's were Sexton to get injured early, a game manager with experience like Jack Carty would be probably the best replacement for now, with Harry Byrne still as a cover. I'm not sure if Sexton got an injury, would you throw Harry Byrne in to start Six Nations games just yet? And that's based on his overall performances in terms of game management.
So how do you see the Irish management edging Harry Byrne towards the starting team? Are they targeting Italy, I wonder, during this campaign?
Yeah, for example, I would totally agree. I think I would start him against Italy. I would start Harry Byrne, even though we know what Carty can do. What I would do is start Sexton, bench Carty, and then in the Italian game, for example, I would leapfrog everyone with Harry Byrne, because we need to see what he's capable of. And in an environment like that, he'd be well suited to coming in. He's very capable, and there's slightly less risk involved in that game. And I think there's not much time left for experimentation, but I do think they should give it a try in maybe one of the games where they know they're going to win well. So I would give him a run against Italy for sure. On
at that point you make, and I heard you make it with Joe before Christmas as well. I think your analogy was that Harry Byrne can hop up to 5th gear from 3rd gear quite a bit, whereas Ross Byrne is more in 3rd gear, but more often. Like, is that easier to do if you've just got better players around you? And by extension, then, if Italy is a weakened 15 overall, is that just a harder thing for Harry Byrne to do? Whereas if he's playing with the experienced, seasoned veterans, as it were, that actually just staying in 3rd gear and trying to bring himself off, trying to do the exciting thing, is maybe that's just an easier thing to achieve in those circumstances?
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, in the sense if you're put into a full strength side that's motoring and as well oiled as a machine, it's easier to fit into that environment than when you come in as a starting 10 and you're also accompanied with 7 other changes. So the combinations are not as familiar. But I don't think that excuses overcomplication. I think, in fact, the opposite you could argue. If you're coming into a relatively new team with new combinations, it's really important that you don't overcomplicate and try too many things. In fact, it's probably more relevant to do the mundane things really well when you've not got familiar combinations. So I don't think that gets him off the hook in terms of what he's done. Now, we spoke a few weeks back, and obviously Leinster haven't played but in recent weeks, but 1 or 2 of the URC games where he came on around after the autumn internationals, he did exactly what I would hope for in a young out half. Is he didn't particularly shine and sparkle, but he started to use people around him in a better way. And I don't think it's anything that is out of his grasp. I just think it's a habitual thing, and it's an age and maturity thing. And his role really is to bring everyone else into the game and make them look good. That's his primary role. It's like saying it's a scrum half who can't pass. An out half who doesn't make the rest of his team look good is not doing his primary job. You're there to be a midfield facilitator. So I think he has that in the locker. It's just an age, maturity and exposure thing. I think coming into an Italian game, regardless of whether he comes into the first choice 15 or he comes in with a number of changes, it's probably the most important role for him is to manage everyone else without kind of overcomplicating the game.
Why do Leinster keep picking Ross ahead of him?
I think for the same reasons. I think Ross fits exactly what Leinster are trying to do in terms of usage of every player around the field. He enhances the strengths of everyone else in a very effortless way because it's his natural game. Whereas Harry is more of the fulcrum of the game revolves around Harry when he's on the field, and it slightly dilutes some of the strengths and powers of the team out wider, or perhaps the execution of team plays or phase plays or patterns where Harry may go off script because he's an intuitive and instinctive player. Sometimes that is counterproductive to running a well-oiled machine. So even though I would speculate that the Leinster management are very aware that Harry is more innately talented than Ross, but for now they're comfortable just picking Ross.
It's a really interesting dynamic, isn't it? Like, it's a very weird situation where 2 brothers are so different in terms of their skill sets. Like, it's just a strange, it's a very strange situation that we have where they're also on the same team and they're also vying for Ireland selection, and yet Leinster have decided that what they need most is consistency in that position, and they know exactly what they're going to get every single time they get it, because that frees whoever plays in their back three and that plays in their midfield as well. And it feels like that's what Ireland need, but yet we're all crying out for Harry Byrne to get in the team because we want that X factor and off the cuff stuff. And I don't know what in the long run is actually better for both teams.
Yeah, it's almost a nature versus nurture question. I think Harry by nature has always been that expressive talent, and Ross is always by nature been very different and has kind of turned away from the limelight in his play and has been very inclusive of everyone around him. And it's just something that is a stylistic thing, very hard to change. The only thing I can relate is my own experience as a young 10. I was very much in the Harry mould, and at the time I would have been third choice behind Raj and Humphreys, but there was never any question of me being involved in the Irish team. I think not based on maybe one-off individual moments. I could produce those, but I was never figuring in the conversation because I was nowhere close to the level of control and game management and reassurance that the likes of Raj and Humps gave, and also their prowess, place kicking and their successful percentages. I think it's easy to wish for a bit of rock and roll and to see mean, we look at Marcus Smith and we look at some of the trends that we're seeing in selection at 10 or across Europe. You're seeing Jalabert and Intimac in France. They're all very exciting. They've all got a bit of X factor in terms of their play. So it's easy to yearn for that. But you've got to trade off with how well the team function with the likes of Sexton or a fit Carberry or potentially a mature kind of game manager like Carty. In Leinster, you've got the exact same with Ross Byrne. But I can understand for sure a kind of a desire in the public to see just someone like Harry Byrne unleashed, allow him make a few mistakes and see how he gets on. And if he was allowed to go out and make a few mistakes and perhaps was given 2 or 3 games in a row, we could see a real diamond. But it's getting close to a World Cup and it's a Six Nations. It's not usually used for experimentational purposes. So I don't know if he's going to get significant game time.
You've got 2 of Ireland's protagonists from the 2020 Six Nations outside the top 3 there. Is there a chance that we see a lot more Ross Byrne and potentially even Billy Byrne's the Six Nations than people might think?
Yeah, well, I get a sense just from Farrell's history with Billy Burns that he may be involved. He's not someone I particularly would include. I just don't think he's been consistent enough. I think he's very much falling between stools in terms of he's not an outstanding game manager and he's not an outstanding individual talent. And I think if you're going to be picking a 10 for the Six Nations, he's got to be falling into one or the other bracket. He's got to be an outstanding individual talent or prospect or a really top level game manager. And I think you've got that in Carty. You can hear, certainly can understand where O'Driscoll is coming from in terms of some of his misgivings with Carty, maybe turning his shoulders and running sideways. But there's a lot of 10s do that in the modern game. But Billy Burns certainly does it. Billy Burns doesn't kick, plays kick at international level. His kicking out of hand has got a lot of variation and threat to it. And he's a little bit of a running threat, but I don't think he's in any way head and shoulders above the likes of Harry Byrne, Ross Byrne or Jack Carty.
It's not going to be a conversation for this year's Six Nations, but the young Munster duo, obviously, of Ben Healy and Jack Crowley have been spoken about in glowing terms at various points. Jack Crowley is the flavour of the month at the moment. Have you put any thought into what their trajectory is in the next 2 or 3 years, this side of the World Cup, say?
Yeah, well, I think Jack Crowley is a really special talent. I think I heard Rog speaking about him and probably the highest praise for a Munster out half is getting that level of credibility from Rog. And he spoke about Jack Crowley's unflappable type of approach. He seems to the manner born in the role. He doesn't seem overwhelmed by the communication required on the field, the decision making, and his time on the ball. And he's I think he's a real potential star of the future. I think he may get a run, more runs for Munster in clutch games, but I don't think he's going to get a run in with the Irish squad. Maybe too early in the lead up to the World Cup, maybe in the next World Cup cycle. But he seems to have all the attributes that are required for a top level 10. Quite physical, excellent kicking game, good distributor, threatening runner, and a lot of composure. So for me, I think if you're looking at a shootout between Ben Healy and Jack Crowley, I would go for Jack Crowley, even though Ben Healy's shown a lot of mental strength and concentration skills and very, very good kicking execution. I don't think his all-round game is up there with Jack Crowley.
It's Munster obviously very well set with those two for the future, assuming that they can keep them both for the long term, because we know short-term contracts seem to be the order of the day at the moment. Is there a pathway for significant game time for Harry Byrne between now and the Rugby World Cup, either for club or country?
No, I don't think there is. I think he's going to have to live off scraps, and he's going to have to show what he can do when he gets those small opportunities. And very often in professional sport, when somebody comes in and takes a small opportunity by executing in a very simple and non-complicated way, they gain the trust of their coaching team. So I think he's going to have, it's a very, very, very difficult thing to do, is to get sitting on a bench 60, 70 minutes week in, week out, and then come on and arrive at the pitch and tempo of the match, make the right calls, underplay your hand, make sure the team keeps performing, and gain the trust of your coaching team when you're not getting adequate exposure. But I think that's his lot for now. I don't see him getting an extended run in a starting role either for Leinster or Ireland. However, if he can somehow nail the 10-15 minute chances he gets, or if, for example, he gets thrown in the deep end against Italy as a starter, he's got a real opportunity there.
Do we underrate Ross Byrne then, by that token, where the whole country seems to be calling for Harry to leapfrog him, and he's managing to hold him off while at the same time playing, anytime Sexton goes down, they look straight to him, he steps in, a beat isn't missed from a Leinster perspective when Sexton's not there. Do we as a rugby culture underrate what Ross Byrne has done?
I think we underrate what he does with Leinster. I think he's an ideal squad member for Leinster in that previously the way Ireland played when Sexton was the kind of commander-in-chief under Schmidt, there was a hierarchy of how the team was controlled. It was very much run through Joe Schmidt and Sexton. And when Sexton left that role, it was very hard for anyone to come into the Irish role and, I suppose, replicate what Johnny was doing, and that included Ross Byrne. But Leinster have had a much more, they spread out the responsibility and the decision-making through the team, and it was less of a hierarchy. And when Sexton wasn't involved with Leinster, Ross Byrne came into the team. It was a more seamless transition into that team, and I think he gained a lot of confidence and a lot of belief from his teammates and from his coaching team in those years. And I think he's very much the ideal backup for Sexton in Leinster, and he often plays a lot more rugby than Sexton in the URC as well. But I'm not sure, to answer the question, Ger, he is underrated in terms of what he's done overall. I still don't think he is, talent-wise, I don't think he can do what Harry can do. And I think Harry leapfrogging him coming into an international setup, surrounded by a team that's purring and doing well, Harry can add a little bit of X factor in terms of game-breaking ability. And I think that's what sets him apart. That's why people want to see him get a role or a run in the Irish team ahead of Ross. We know what Ross can do, which is, I suppose, the simple things done well on a repeated basis. But at international level, you need a little bit more. And I think Harry has the ability to crack open a defence in a different way.
All right, Andy, we'll leave it there. Good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
And to you, that's Andy Dunne's depth chart. Really interesting stuff. We do love our 10 conversation and our 10 debates, but it looks like Munster are pretty well stocked.
Yeah, I do think that there's a reason why we love our 10 debates, because it's a really important one, that one of Ireland's greatest ever rugby players is coming to the twilight of his career, and there are a number of very, very talented pretenders doing the rounds at the moment that we still just don't know how high their ceiling is. And then you've got a couple of very intriguing middle of the road guys, a guy who's been scapegoated for a shock in Shizuoka, and a couple of other options who have been possibly underrated, certainly one of them in Ross Byrne. So the storylines are genuinely fascinating. I don't think it's an over obsession with the 10. It is the most
hugely important.
It is the most interesting story in the Ireland.
The other thing to remember about Japan is that Carty didn't play in the final game against New Zealand, did he?
I don't think. All I remember from an out-half perspective is obviously Sexton not making his touch, but I couldn't. Maybe he did. I can't remember.
OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with the new and improved razors. Breaking news: the football pod is back for its 2022 season. However, it features an emotional goodbye from Andy Moore, and it's no longer the football pod with Paddy and Andy. It's the football pod with Paddy and, well, I don't know, Tommy, yeah.
Tommy's going to interview himself.
Is Tommy going to promote himself? Is that what's going to happen?
That's it.
It's the biggest January deal to be done this year. There needs to be somebody to balance otherwise it'll just turn into a Dubs love fest.
Absolutely. I mean, Tommy, are you calling Tommy a closet Dublin supporter?
Oh, totally. He gets sucked in.
He does.
He does. It's like, oh wow, look.
Anybody who's at the top.
That podcast, this week's edition, which does feature an emotional goodbye from the Leitrim manager Andy Moran, is available exclusively on the OTB Sports app right now. It'll be on all of the rest of our podcast platforms in 24 hours. But if you want to listen to it now, and I don't know, are they going to announce the replacement today or tomorrow, or when's it coming?
Like give it X until the end of the season.
Who could potentially replace Andy Moran?
I mean, I think he's irreplaceable. I mean,
can't be another dub, can it?
No.
That'd just be double dub. We had enough of that.
Footballer of the year calibre, you can't replace that.
You can't, it's impossible. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. 1 o'clock OTB Gold, Inside Porrick, Harrington's Gaff, Cribs, Harrington Style. Dadcast from 3, a career retrospective of Matt Holland at 4. Joe meets Ruby Walsh on OTB Gold at 6, and the show is live tonight from 7 tomorrow. Nathan is going to join us. We'll also be joined by Ireland star Louise Quinn and much more live from 7:30. Watching back from the start, but wanted to say good morning, says Jack. And Stephen says Harry Byrne has played 20 more professional games than Jack Crowley. That's why he's ahead. Neither should be ahead of Carty, though. It is probably time. Like, you need to give Carty good quality game time now in case he needs to be your starting out half for the World Cup, because there's a very clear pathway for Carty to be your starting out half, where Carberry is injured, Sexton finishes up his career, and you're left with Harry behind Ross, and you've decided Ross isn't your guy. By the process of elimination, come on down, Jack Carty.
Are we complete lunatics though having this conversation? Is this like fantasising about what the Ireland midfield would look like with Declan Rice in it, like a few years ago before he pledged his allegiance to England, that we thought, he'll be fine? Like, is all the evidence that we've had over recent years not that he's just not going to get picked for Ireland?
Well, yeah, but maybe things change. Gotta go. We're going to leave you with some high energy Luke Jensen. Enjoy.
Welcome back. Rest assured, this, I would think, for a while, the last time we'll mention Novak Djokovic on the show. Deported from Australia, he's back in Belgrade as the tournament is up and running. We are going to talk about the tournament as well in this conversation. To that end, we have Luke Jensen with us, a one-time French Open doubles winner. Luke, it has been too long. You're very welcome.
Hey, it's great to be on every single time we get to the topics. Djokovic is the hottest topic on the planet right now and everything.
You're obviously paying very close attention to the American coverage. What's been the general level of sympathy or otherwise for Djokovic? Or does that depend these days on which channel you're watching?
I think, well, that's a really good point. I think the biggest thing is, what side of the discussion are you on? Are you a vax person or are you a non-vax person? And I think that's a global kind of mindset. And for to sort through starting at those points. And for me at ESPN, we have to be triple vaxxed. We have to have the 2 shots plus the booster to work. And I made the choice that I wanted to work. I like working. I like to pay bills. But I'm 55 years old and at a different stage in life. The professionals, I think, at the U.S. Open, there was less than 50% of the players in the main draw of the U.S. Open were vaxxed. Now it's close to 97% of the players that were entered at the U.S. Open. I'm sorry, at the Australian Open. So it's moving in the right direction. Players want to play. The bottom line is Australia made a huge unforced error. They knew that Novak Djokovic wasn't vaxxed. He talked about it. And they made an exception, the state of Victoria did, instead of the federal government saying, if you're vaxxed, you can play. If you're not vaxxed, you can't play. End of discussion. And then from there is this avalanche of unforced errors that happen. So the feeling in the United States is, why let the guy get on the plane if you're going to do that? And then all these other layers anti-Djokovic, or should I say Novak's Djokovic, where he was seen in public when he supposedly had COVID, that really has rubbed people the wrong way.
That definitely has. The Serbian president, rather than discuss that, just wanted to talk today about how Djokovic had endured 10 days of torture. His word, 10 days of torture, and said this was a ginormous witch hunt. Look, the Australian government have made a complete mess of this, there is no doubt. What did strike me as odd, and it's beside the point, because I think it was probably very understandable that they did deport him, given it turned out he had lied on his papers. But the immigration minister, Alex Hawke, who ultimately made the decision and was given the power to make the decision, he argued that keeping Djokovic would stoke anti-vax sentiment and therefore let's get him out of here. I don't know. I really don't know about that. 90% plus of Australians are vaccinated. I don't think Novak Djokovic over the last 10 days convinced anyone who was vaccinated that that was a bad idea. And the anti-vax inclined latched onto him, but they were anti-vax inclined anyway, I would say. And he's become a poster boy of sorts for them. So, but I'm not sure the extent to which Djokovic playing in the tournament would have stoked up further anti-vax sentiment. And it might have been, I would suggest, much cleaner for the minister to just say, well, this is a very simple case of you lying on your application form. Therefore, there's no ambiguity here. This is even a matter of opinion. You just have to leave, and it's that simple. I think he's almost risked creating an anti-vax martyr here in Djokovic, a victim of politics, by kicking him out for these reasons. And the federal court weren't ruling on Alex Hawke's rationale. They were just upholding his right to make the decision. Alex Hawke is allowed to make the decision. They weren't saying if they thought it was a smart reason or not. And I don't know, it just seemed like a final signature chef's kiss of a mess from the Australian government to the very end.
And what do you know? It's an election year down there.
Yeah.
Shocker. We had the same situation, as you know, January 6th, where, who won the election, who didn't win the election. People stormed the Capitol of the United States. I mean, just crazy in these times where we're not coming together and just having common sense conversations, and we can disagree. This situation just got out of control because we can just go through the timeline. It's unbelievable where the Prime Minister said the day before Djokovic sent out that tweet, that Instagram post that he was coming down, the Prime Minister said, listen, this is a state issue. This is not a federal issue. I'm not making the decision. The state of Victoria will make that decision. And then as soon as Djokovic makes that the Instagram post that, hey, I'm excited. I'm on the plane. I'm coming down to play the Australian Open. And that set the whole thing on fire. And I think that's the one thing Djokovic, when he looks back at the entire mess, that's the one thing he wishes he hadn't pressed send to that whole situation that started this. Bottom line is, moving forward, and the French government's going to make a decision about the French. The British government is going to make a decision about Wimbledon, who gets in, who doesn't. Right now, Novak Djokovic cannot get into the United States. Now, of course, it's moving and evolving all the time, but as of right now, if you're not vaxxed, you can't fly into the United States. Yeah. You can't get in. So he's not playing the US Open.
Interesting. Well, the French, just in the last 24 hours, have really taken a move which doesn't look good for him. So they have a new law banning unvaccinated people from sports venues, restaurants, other public places. That will apply to the tournament as well in Paris, to the French Open. The sports minister last week had been talking about bubbles for unvaccinated athletes, but in the last 24 hours she's done a U-turn on that front and said that won't be an option. So that leaves Djokovic really facing the dilemma to get vaccinated to win that 21st Grand Slam, or to stand by his principles. I would wager, Luke, and it's all speculation at this stage, who knows, maybe he sits around for the next 2-3 months and watches the possibility of him never getting to 21 become real potential, and just frustratingly goes with pragmatism and gets the vaccine. But I kind of think he's not going to do that. I think he's fairly entrenched here. I think there's a real chance this scuppers is 2022 anyway, whatever about 23, when hopefully this is more of a distant memory.
He's got to be real careful, though. The next few words or the next press conference that comes out of his mouth, remember, the Australian government, because his visa was turned down, there's a 3-year ban that goes with that. So the tournament that he's done the best at, he's won 9 of these Australian Opens. He's won the last, I think, 3 in a row. You don't want to tick off the government, who doesn't care about forehands and backhands. They just may stick it to him once again. So he's got to be very careful. If he's just, the ball's in his court, he's got to make a decision. Do I do this or not? I think if he does want to stay unvaxxed, he has an opportunity to maybe be Prime Minister of Serbia. He's gotten that much support from his home country. He could go beyond tennis into politics, because he has been really the massive ambassador for the country of Serbia for 15, 20 years. So I think he, if he does decide to stay in that mindset. The other thing we have to think about, these former, communist Eastern Bloc countries, these people are not happy with government. They came from a communist system where the government gave them propaganda, told them exactly what to do, and they had no other choice. Now they've had some freedom, and they know what it's like when the government tells you what to do and sticks it to you. And I think Serbia, the culture is just like, the government's not going to tell us what to do. And I think that's maybe some of the mindset. And that's how he plays. He likes it's him against the world. Had a great conversation with John McEnroe. He just went off for about 10 minutes talking about both sides and everything like that, and how he was kind of like a Djokovic. It was him against the world. He played better that way. He thrived in that. And John McEnroe, he had his issues down in Australia. If you remember, it's the only place he got defaulted. He was playing Michael Pernfors at the Australian Open one year. But I think it's a deeper sense of the steps forward. And remember, how does this affect Djokovic mentally? This guy's had unforced error after unforced error. In, in 20, in the COVID year, the U.S. Open, he turns around. He was undefeated that year. Was going to win the tournament, turns around, fires the ball in frustration, hits a lines person, gets default. Then last year at the U.S. Open, he's going for the calendar slam and runs out of gas, freezes at the controls, and doesn't have a good match. So he leaves that one on the table. And now this. So, and the young bucks, there's so many good players coming through, not the Federers and Nadals. Andy Murray's winning tournaments again, but it's the young guys, Zverev, Tsitsipas, Medvedev has already won a U.S. Open and beat Djokovic. I think it's going to be very interesting how Djokovic recalibrates where he goes next.
Yeah, well, time is suddenly very valuable for him, and a wasted year would be a costly one. Rafa Nadal, therefore, can go for a 21st Grand Slam, the only player in the tournament who can go for a 21st Grand Slam. Let's talk about the tennis. The only previous champion in the men's draw. He won his first round earlier this morning. He's the 6th seed. He won in straight sets. 35 years old now. In the last 2 years, he's only played 12 events. And Rafa said, and I haven't practiced much either. So he is third in the betting if you have a glance at it. Medvedev, who beat Djokovic at Flushing Meadows last autumn, he's 2-1, give or take. And you mentioned Zverev, Alexander Zverev, he's 4-1 territory. Then there's Rafa, and then there's Tsitsipas, who you mentioned as well as one of the other coming forces.
Tsitsipas is 20-1, right?
Yeah,
there's Tsitsipas is really good value.
Okay, there's a gap to him, certainly in the eyes of the bookies. So Medvedev, his eyes are suddenly widening. He's thinking, I could swoop in here and win a couple of these and get, become a 2, 3, 4, 5-time Grand Slam winner maybe. So how good is Medvedev? Is he, without Djokovic there, is he, in your eyes, the likely winner of the Australian Open, Luke?
Well, it's right now he's the favorite because everybody sees he's fit. He comes to these tournaments now and he puts in the work. I know at the U.S. Open, and it was hot the week before, it was qualifying week, and he was doing 3 2-hour sessions of just sets. So he went to Tokyo Games and he felt the heat really got to him. He made an adjustment in his training regimen leading up to these majors, and it paid off because by the end of the tournament, he was getting stronger. Djokovic was out of gas, and he was lapping the field. It's amazing because right now these players will have these runs, and Medvedev is on a run right now. How do you beat a guy who's like, 6'6", 6'7", long, fast, big serve? He can go 135 with the first. He can go, 112, 115 with the second, and he can come to the net. And most of all, he's really smart tactically. They haven't figured him out yet, and I think talent like a Zverev, a talent like a Tsitsipas could do it, could possibly take him out. But these tournaments, as you know, they're long and you have to navigate some qualifiers, some upstarts. You're going to have to navigate when you're not feeling good. Berrettini's another one. This Italian, he was sick yesterday, still fired 21 aces, only 2 double faults in a 4-set win. There are dangerous waters for everybody, but Medvedev clearly, because he's got a Grand Slam in his pocket, he's figured out the code, how to do it. I like his chances.
3 years ago at this very tournament, Andy Murray bade a tearful farewell to everybody. It was his retirement. I mean, we all said goodbye to Andy Murray. He's 135th in the world. He's had his various hip operations and he's been given a wild card to play. He made the final of the Sydney International final, the warm-up event last week, which is no small thing, I would presume. Completely unrealistic to expect something of Andy Murray here?
Not at all. Just because champions have the mindset, he's got a lot of trophies in that trophy case. It will always come down to, and I've never really gotten the official word, how is that hip? Remember, he's got a replacement hip, replacement parts, and just how long can this guy go, especially in these conditions? Best of 5 sets. And it's not that his body can't do the distance. It's just like, can that hip recover and do what it needs to do? Clearly, he doesn't move the way he used to. So he keeps the point short, goes for a little bit more, makes a few more unforced errors, but he understands this is the game. If he wants to play the best players in the world, and he still loves doing it, he still loves the training, and boy, the players respect him so much. The players really love watching him practice, love watching him play, just because they admire a guy who doesn't need the money, doesn't need to be doing this, but wants to do this. We're a sport that has a lot of burnout from the juniors and then in the university level and even the pros when it gets so hard, the lifestyle. But this is a really nice example of someone who loves to play the game, and he's still playing it at a high level. I think he can make a run, get to the second week, but he has to serve well. If he serves well, and he has the potential to serve big serves, especially on the first, that's going to help him a ton.
It'd be a hell of a story. The women's draw then. So I was watching Coco Gauff lose this morning. Still only 17, Coco Gauff. You know, such a superstar for one so young. 18th seed. She was dominated by the world 110. So out in the first round. Touch emotional in her press conference. Not overly, but obviously it's a long way to come to get dumped out in the first round. Are you liking Coco Gauff's progress? Is this just a minor blip on the road, or is there anything to suggest she mightn't have the career that we all initially thought and hoped she might have when she burst onto the scene?
Well, at 17 years old, turning 18 in March, she's come really far. I mean, you look at 15, she was the one who qualified at Wimbledon and beat Venus in the first round and really hit the stage, blew everything up, and everything was fantastic. Last year, and remember, this is through COVID too. This is through all what you have to do as an international player, traveling across these timelines and borders to deal with that as a teenager. Last year she did, she had an okay year. She's seeded now from a qualifier as a 15-year-old. Now going into this year's Australian Open, she was the 18th seed, and just really played a horrible match. And that's going to happen for anybody. You're going to get these. I think as she plays more of these situations, she'll know how to navigate, how to play, and how to dismantle somebody who's going for everything. Her opponent has nothing to lose, gets out there and goes for shots, and you're not playing your best. How do you mentally get through it, tactically get through it? The other thing is, she did get to the finals of the U.S. Open doubles, so she's still playing doubles, working on her game. I just don't know if personally the coach is, because Dad's in there, and, I just don't know about her team, because I don't see personally the development there should be. She's stuck. Am I a power player, or am I kind of a consistent player that's going to grind you down and I've got great athleticism? Is she just kind of like, she breaks off, and when I see her points, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no structure, and she just kind of wings it. And so to me, as she matures and grows, she needs a really good corner person, someone in there who's played, one of these legends. You see it all the time. Darren Cahill's working with a young American, Anna Samova, and she just won her second tour title at 250 in Melbourne the week before the Aussie. And that's a good example of a former player who was a top 20, I think top 10, but he's worked with Flayton Hewitt, Andre Agassi, Halep helped her win a major. And so you get these players these coaches that have the GPS coordinates, how to get you to the top. And she's top 20 in the world. I mean, she's right there, and she's got so much more runway in front of her to work. I'm not concerned, but right now I would think she would be able to navigate someone who is, on the other side of the net, who doesn't have the same talent or credentials.
Okay, very interesting. Before you go, Naomi Osaka won her opening match. She is the defending champion. She had an extraordinary 2021 off the court as well as on the court. And then Ashley Barty is the home favourite. So is this Barty versus Osaka, do we feel, Luke, or do you see someone coming up on the blind side?
Well, you have to, Raducanu, Emma won the US Open as a qualifier. She got COVID. Anybody can win this. There's probably 40 or 50 women in the draw that have the talent to win this thing. And it's just, you got 7 matches in front of you. You take the one that steps onto the court and you dismantle them. Barty's the one that's the most put together. Barty's the one with the most maturity, with the Wimbledon title in her pocket. She's won a French. She loves playing in Australia, her home country. But Osaka's got the ultimate, she's got the weapons all over the place. The huge serve, big ground strokes, very athletic. When she's teeing off on the ball and landing those punches, she's so dangerous. But to me, can Osaka come down here to the happy slam and be happy once again? Can she go to the press conferences? Can she handle when she's not playing well? Find a way to win, to navigate those troubled waters. Barty is definitely the favorite. Everyone feels this is the girl's just coming in. She's been to the semis before. I think it was in 20. She got to the semis and lost to Kennan. There's another person who's struggling right now, who's a former major champion. So it's not a done deal, but you can see there are favorites that have done well in the majors in the past that are mentally and emotionally ready to take this tournament.
Yeah, and I don't want to put you in the position of trying to diagnose anybody from afar, so don't go down that terrain. But on an obvious level, has Osaka pitched up in good form and feeling less burdened, do we think, mentally than we saw her last year?
Well, I think she's holding her cards close to the vest. She did her press conference. Yes, she's doing everything she's supposed to do. I think she's been coached up, and you need coaching in those things. When you're the mega superstar, every word that comes out of your mouth, we heard this with Djokovic, we saw it with Djokovic, it gets magnified to the, and so everybody, especially Japanese media, and now the international media are watching the superstar, every word she says. So she did the on-court interview, and then she did the post-match press conference. Nothing out of the ordinary. She's here to play tennis, and that's where you put your blinders on and keep it simple. Don't start going down rabbit holes and trying to figure out and psychoanalyze everything. You're here to play tennis, and you love Australia. You love the people here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to let me play. Done.
Okay. Hopefully an interesting fortnight ahead. Luke Jensen, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Love the ball, baby. Love the ball.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.